I don't remember the last time I felt truly alone on a call. Not the kind of alone where your radio crackles with static and the streets are empty. I mean the kind where the air itself seems to fold in on you, and every instinct in your body is telling you that something has changed. That night star like any other. Too quiet, too empty, but I didn't know it then. The call came in just after midnight. A wreck at mile marker 13. A car flipped on its roof, smoke rising faintly in the fog. They didn't know if anyone was inside, and the dispatcher's voice had that tight, careful edge, like she was already bracing me. I pulled my cruiser off the highway, the tires crunching against the gravel shoulder. The headlights cut through the mist in two narrow cones, illuminating the wreck. I parked maybe 20 feet away, cut the engine, and stepped out. The cold hit my face immediately, sharper than anything I had felt during the day. It was one of those nights where the fog sits low, pressing against the trees lining the road, muffling every sound except your own heartbeat. My boot sank slightly into the damp gravel. I glanced at the car. It was an older model, dark green, smashed against a guardrail. The roof was caved in and the driver's side windows shattered. But no one, nobody. I crouched, shining my flashlight inside. Empty. Seatbelt undone. Airbag deflated. The smell of gasoline thick. My stomach twisted. Hello? I called, my voice small against the mist. Nothing. Only the distant hum of the highway beyond the trees. I tried the radio, thinking maybe a deputy had more information. That's when it started. First, just a whisper through the static. My name, Officer Matthews. At first, I thought it was a dispatcher. Matthews, come in. I said, silence. Then again, clearer this time. Matthews. I froze. I didn't answer immediately. The voice, my voice, echoed through the radio, low, slow. Each repetition came with that uncanny certainty, like someone else knew me the way I knew myself, but better. I tried shaking it off. Could be a prank. Could be interference. Could be anything. But then I noticed the headlights. Not mine. Far down the road. There was another car. Headlights on, stationary. I squinted, but the fog swallowed it. When I turned back to the wreck, it felt different. The wreck itself seemed darker, more jagged somehow. The shadows leaning, and the smell. Now the smell of smoke wasn't just in the wreck. It was in the air, choking metallic like burnt hair. I called it in again, voice steady, keeping my fingers from trembling. Dispatch, I'm on scene. No driver. Vehicle's empty. I'm checking the perimeter. Static. And then, more clearly through the crackle, my name again. Matthews. This time almost right next to me, though the radio sat dead on the passenger seat. My heart hammered. I swung around, flashlight cutting through the fog, half expecting. What? Someone to jump out? But there was nothing. Just the trees, leaning in like they were listening. I went around the car, flashlight scanning the forest line. The ground was soft, mud sticking to my boots, leaves damp and rotten. The highway behind me hummed faintly. Distant headlights of a passing truck casting momentary shadows that twisted into shapes that didn't belong. Nothing. No footprints. No body. Nothing at all except that car and fog. I took a deep breath, trying to shake it off. It's easy to rationalize fear when you're trained for it. But this wasn't fear of danger. It was something else. Something deeper. Something that whispered that I wasn't alone even when I couldn't see anyone. Then the radio changed. The static increased, and my name started repeating faster. Not just Matthews, Matthews, but a stuttering, anxious whisper. Matthews, Officer Matthews, Matthews, like someone or something was mimicking me, testing me, waiting. I grabbed the radio, shaking slightly. Dispatch, I said, voice tight. Do you hear that? The radio. Static. Nothing. Just the echo of my own name in the fog outside. I slammed the radio down, heart racing, and leaned against the hood of my cruiser. My hands felt cold, numb, sticky with sweat despite the chill. I tried to remind myself. Cars flip, people run, accident happened. Maybe the driver ran into the woods. Maybe it's just the fog playing tricks. I started calling out. Hello? Sir? Are you okay? My voice sounded strange, hollow, swallowed by the mist. No answer. Just a repeated whisper through the radio. Matthews, Matthews, Matthews. Something moved in the trees then. A shape. At first, I thought it was a deer or maybe just a trick of the fog. But it wasn't. It was upright, watching. I froze. Every instinct screamed to get back to the cruiser, to drive away, to call for backup. But my legs felt like lead. I couldn't move. The shape shifted, not like a person walking, but sliding, gliding, fluid and unnatural. I blinked, trying to focus. When I looked again, it was gone. The forest just hung there, silent, waiting. And the radio, oh God, the radio, it screamed my name again, now overlapping, layered, like hundreds of whispers pressing on me from all directions. I stumbled back toward the cruiser, hands trembling as I reached for the door handle. My eyes darted to the side, and for the first time, I noticed it. There were footprints. Human, small, leading away from the wreck and into the forest. Only, the car was fresh. The driver couldn't have walked away. Not like this. Not unseen. And then my stomach dropped. I realized the footprints weren't just on one side. They circled the car. Some led away. Some led right back to the driver's side, looping impossibly, as if the car had been surrounded by someone or something, watching, waiting. I got inside the cruiser, locked the doors, and fumbled with the radio, trying to call in, trying to get an explanation. Dispatch answered finally, voice careful, calm. Matthews? Everything okay? I swallowed hard. Yeah, everything's fine. Just an empty vehicle, mile marker 13. No driver. I need units, perimeter, something. Just get someone here. They repeated back my call sign, and then it happened again. Through the static, louder, sharper. Not the dispatcher, not someone else. My own voice calling my name. Matthews, Matthews. I froze. The hair on my arm stood up. My eyes darted to the rear view mirror, to the back seat. Nothing. Then to the passenger side. Nothing. But the radio kept repeating. Faster now. Overlapping. My name. My voice. My own self. Calling from nowhere. I thought of my training. Stay calm. Document. Keep control. But the words felt hollow, inadequate against the pressing dread that filled the car. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was a presence. Something was here, watching, waiting. Something that knew me, knew my fears, knew my name. I called for backup again, louder this time, voice cracking. Dispatch, I need. The radio died. Dead silence. No static, no voice. Just me, the wreck, and the fog pressing close like a living thing. I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe, trying to think. Outside, the headlights of the other car were gone. The forest was still. The wreck was still. But the dread, that didn't leave. And then I heard it, outside the cruiser. Faint at first, almost like a memory. Footsteps. Soft, slow, circling, matching the pattern of the prints outside. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I didn't look. I didn't want to. I couldn't. I only knew it was there, patient, deliberate, waiting for me to make a mistake, waiting for me to leave the car, waiting for me to call my name out loud so it could answer. I stayed in the cruiser until backup arrived, but even when other units got there, I couldn't shake it. The way the radio had spoken, the way the fog had moved, the way the air had felt alive, almost aware. I told myself it was nothing, just stress, just fatigue, just imagination, but I haven't been able to forget. My name, repeating in the dead air, the empty car, the footprints that made no sense, and the feeling that whatever it was still waiting for me, somewhere, just out of sight. I woke up the next morning feeling hollow, like my chest had been emptied overnight. The fog from last night still clung to my mind. Every detail, every sound, every whisper that radio replaying my name, it was all there, clear, too clear. I tried to write the report, tried to get the facts down. Officer on scene, empty vehicle, mile marker 13, but when I opened the system, the file wasn't there, not a trace, not even a call log. I stared at the screen, blinking. thinking maybe it was a glitch. But I know the system. I've worked it long enough to know how it handles calls. There should have been something. Notes, a timestamp, anything. But it was like the wreck never existed. My hand shook slightly as I tried again. Searched by location, by time, even by my name. Nothing. Just emptiness. I asked the dispatcher later, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, did you get my report from last night? The mile marker 13 incident. Her voice was polite, flat, like she didn't want to think too hard. Mile marker 13? I don't see any call logged there. Matthews? No, I was on scene. There was a car flipped. Empty. I filed a report. You should have it. She paused. Just a fraction too long. I'm checking. Nothing, sir. No calls. No reports. I hung up before I could say anything else. That pause, that blankness, it gnawed at me. I knew what I saw. I knew what I heard. I even knew the radio had spoken my name, repeating it, layering it, until it felt like it came from inside my skull. And now the system itself denied it. I tried to shake it off. I thought maybe I'd just go back, go to the scene, retrace my steps. The wreck might be gone, but the marks, the physical evidence couldn't just vanish. So I drove back to mile marker 13, early morning fog curling along the asphalt, turning the forest edges into dark, misted shapes. The highway was quiet, almost eerily so, like it was holding its breath. When I reached the spot, my stomach dropped. There was no wreck, no twisted car, no shattered glass, no smoke. The guardrail was perfect, clean, untouched. I stepped out of the cruiser, boots crunching softly against the gravel. I ran my hands over the metal. Nothing. The ground was smooth. No debris, no tire tracks, not even the faintest imprint of where the car had landed. I crouched and stared, blinking. Maybe I misremembered. Stress, fatigue, too much caffeine. I tried to convince myself. But then I saw it, tire marks. At first, faint, just barely darker than the gravel. Curved, looping, heading from the shoulder back into the forest. They were fresh, wet, dark, almost like someone had just pressed them into the dirt. I froze. My own memory of last night was sharp, but these marks, they weren't just leftovers. They weren't echoes. They were new, fresh. Someone or something had been here after me, or maybe even with me. I followed the tracks with my eyes, tracing them into the trees. They curved in impossible ways, doubling back on themselves, circling, disappearing into the shadows. My heart pounded. My mind tried to make sense of it. How could this happen? How could car vanish entirely but leave tracks like this? And why did it feel like I wasn't the only one watching? I reached for my radio. Dispatch! I'm back on scene. Something's off. My voice sounded small, thin, swallowed by the morning air. I got no answer. The static stayed silent, almost waiting. My own name didn't repeat through it this time, but that absence was worse. It was like a pause, a quiet promise that it could return at any moment. I walked the shoulder slowly, scanning the misted tree lean. Every shadow looked like it might move, every sound like a step behind me. I kept telling myself I was trained for this. That fear didn't get to me, but it did. It always did. And this was new. This was something that didn't make sense, that no amount of training could prepare me for. The more I stared at the tracks, the worse it got. They curved back toward the road, looped in patterns that made no sense for a car, and yet they were perfect tire impressions, pressed deep into the soft shoulder. I ran my fingers over one. It was cold, damp, like the gravel itself had soaked up the night and was holding it there, holding it for me. I started walking the forest line. Leaves squished under my boots. Mud caked the soles. The fog had thickened again, hanging low in the trees, turning the branches into black, clawed shapes. I followed the tracks as far as I dared, deeper than I'd gone before. They ended at a patch of disturbed underbrush, flattened in a circle, like something heavy had been set down and lifted again. I stopped, chest tight. My breath puffed white in the cold. The hairs on my arms stood on end. And then I heard it. Faint at first, a whisper. Not my radio this time. Not static. Something soft brushing through the trees. A voice, but it wasn't my name. Not yet. It was a sound, a sigh, a shiver in the air. I turned back toward the road. The fog was thicker now, almost moving, curling around the shoulder, hugging the guardrail. It felt alive, watching, waiting. The forest had a smell too, like wet earth and iron, like rain falling over something burned. My stomach churned, my hands shook. I wanted to get back to the cruiser, wanted to leave, but my legs were fused, heavy with dread and curiosity, tangled in the same thread. I looked down at the tracks again, and that's when I saw it. Something I shouldn't have. A mark that hadn't been there last night. Not a tire print. A shape, almost human, pressed into the dirt. Small, slender, barely visible, but unmistakable. Standing just at the edge of the shoulder, pointing toward the wreck's former position, like a finger, or maybe a warning. I swallowed hard. I wanted to call it in, to get someone here. But even my own voice felt heavy, stuck. And I remembered last night, how the radio had repeated my name, faster, insistent, layered. How the forest seemed aware of me. How the wreck had existed and then hadn't. And now this. Now the tracks, the prints, the whisper in the trees. I stepped back, tried to turn away. But my eyes kept going back to the forest line. Something moved there. Something just at the edge of visibility. I couldn't make it out. Not human. Not animal. Just there, waiting. And then it vanished, like it had never been. But I knew it had been there. I knew it. I didn't stay long. I drove back, hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles were white. The radio stayed silent, static-free. Dispatch answered when I called. They were polite, concerned, but skeptical. Mile marker 13? No call, no wreck, no tire marks. I didn't argue. I couldn't. I just said yes, ma'am, yes, sir, over and over, letting them think I was mistaken. But I know I wasn't. I remember every detail. The wreck, the radio, the footprints, the new tire marks, the way the forest looked alive. I know it. And I also know that something had been there after me, watching, marking, waiting. Something that wanted me to see it. Something that wanted me to know it was still there. I keep thinking about the print at the edge of the road. The one small human shape. What it meant. Who or what made it. And the tracks. Fresh. Impossible. And me. The only one who can remember. I can't shake it. Every time I close my eyes, I see that patch of flattened earth. Hear the whisper through the trees. Feel the weight of the fog pressing down on me. I try to tell myself I'm imagining it, that it's stress, that I need sleep. But I can't, because I know it isn't over. And I know it's still out there. It started with a recording. At first, I didn't even want to look at it. I knew it was there, sitting in the system, waiting. I've been running my dash cam every night after the mile marker 13 incidents, just in case something showed up, something tangible, something I could prove. The first few nights were quiet. Nothing but empty roads, fog crawling along the asphalt like smoke. My own reflection in the glass, the dashboard lights humming, the soft thrum of the engine, nothing else. But on the fourth night, I saw it. I had parked the cruiser in my driveway, the garage half shut, leaving the camera running. I was tired, and I went inside, tried to sleep, tried to pretend that last night, mile marker 13, was gone. But the memory kept returning. The tire marks, the prints, the forest, the whispering, and that radio repeating my name over and over, faster each time. I sat down at the monitor and hit play. At first, it was just the interior of the cruiser. Quiet. My hands gripped the edge of the desk. And then, at exactly 3:17 a.m. movement, a shape, a figure, sitting in the passenger seat. I froze. I hadn't been there. I hadn't left the doors unlocked. I hadn't anyone. But there it was, silhouetted against the dim glow of the dashboard, pale, hunched, head tilted slightly. I couldn't make out features. The fog windows distorted everything, but it was human enough to know it shouldn't be there. I leaned closer, squinting. The figure didn't move much. Just sat, watching, waiting. The entire recording played like that. hour after hour. Every night, same seat, same posture. Always there when I wasn't looking. Always there when I wasn't aware. I thought maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe my imagination, running wild after mile marker 13. But the dash cam doesn't lie. I've checked it dozens of times. Timestamped, clear, and the figure never left. I started showing the footage to colleagues, hoping anyone, could explain it. They laughed nervously at first. A glitch, maybe, one said. Another suggested a shadow from the streetlights. But when I showed the clips side by side, frame by frame, they went quiet. Too quiet, because in every single recording, the passenger's head turned slightly whenever the cruiser's engine hummed. Slight nods, slight movements, like it was alive, like it knew I was watching. I tried to explain it to myself. Stress, fatigue, the fog from mile marker 13 lingering in my mind, wrapping around everything. But when I closed my eyes, I saw the same thing. That silhouette, hunched and still, never blinking, always there. Watching, waiting. It got worse. I started noticing things in the cruiser itself. Little things. My notebook slightly shifted on the passenger seat. Pens moved. Empty coffee cups tilting, not falling, as if something had nudged them with invisible fingers. My jacket, folded neatly on the back seat, sometimes gone and then back, draped differently, like it had been worn. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. I had to. I was a cop, trained, logical, rational, but the recordings didn't lie. Every night it sat there, always in the passenger seat, always still, watching, waiting. I stopped parking in my driveway for a while, started leaving the cruiser in the lot behind the station, but that didn't help. The dash cam footage still showed it, sitting there, every night, like a constant shadow. I tried covering the camera, tried disabling it. Nothing. The figure appeared in the same spot, in the same posture, no matter what I did. I started recording myself inside the cruiser, sitting there, eyes fixed on the passenger seat, waiting to see if it would appear in real time. But it never did while I was awake. Only when I wasn't watching. Only when the cruiser sat alone, breathing in the night. That realization, it made my stomach twist. I began losing sleep. Not just the usual fatigue from long shifts or the mental weight of police work. Something deeper. Something primal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the seat. Empty. Or so I thought. And then in my peripheral vision, it shifted. Leaned slightly. Head tilting, just like in the recordings. Always just out of focus. But unmistakable. I started to notice subtle things in the cruiser when I drove at night. Glances in the rearview mirror. Shadows that didn't belong. The faintest scent of something cold, metallic, like wet iron, hovering over the passenger seat. Sometimes a soft sigh, barely audible over the engine hum, like it was breathing while I drove. I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe it? Not my colleagues. Not my family. The more I tried, the more they questioned my sanity. And maybe they were right. Maybe I was losing it. But the recordings didn't lie. They never did. One night, I tried something desperate. I parked the cruiser on the edge of the forest near mile marker 13. I left the engine running, lights dimmed, camera rolling, sat in my seat, gripping the steering wheel, watching, waiting. The mist curled around the windshield, curling like fingers, and then I saw it, the figure in the passenger seat, head tilted slightly, just like in the recordings, watching, waiting. I reached over. My hand trembled. I touched the empty seat. Nothing. Cold leather. No one there. But I could feel it. The weight. The presence. It was there. Watching. Listening. Knowing. The dash cam recorded it anyway. Head turning toward me. As if aware I was awake. Aware I could feel it. But when I looked over in real time, nothing. Just the passenger seat. Just the quiet hum of the engine. I couldn't sleep for days after that. Not properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, head tilted, hunched, watching, waiting. I started talking to myself in the cruiser, saying my name out loud, hoping it would react, hoping I could understand what it wanted, but it didn't respond, not in words, just the same movement, watching, waiting, always watching. I began noticing subtle differences in the recordings over time. Each night, the figure seemed slightly closer, not in size, but in presence. The shadows stretched further into my space, filling the passenger side, until I started feeling it even when I was awake. Leaning just a little, a weight pressing into the seat beside me. Heavy, oppressive, like it was learning my habits, mapping my life. I became obsessive, checking the dash cam before bed, before driving anywhere, before leaving the station, always looking for the slightest change, always watching, waiting, because I knew it was watching me too. And sometimes, just sometimes, I could swear I heard my name whispered softly from the passenger side. Not through the radio this time, not through anything, just a voice soft, almost a shadow, brushing against my mind. I stopped leaving the cruiser anywhere overnight. I locked it in the garage. I triple-checked the doors, but it didn't matter. The recording still showed it. Every night, always there, always still, always watching. I began to realize something terrifying. It wasn't just a passenger seat. It wasn't just a cruiser. It was me. It wanted me to see it, to notice, to know it was there, and maybe eventually it wanted more. I thought about quitting. I thought about leaving town, leaving the job, leaving everything. But I can't. I'm too entrenched, too aware, too haunted. And I know, deep down, that running won't matter. It'll follow. The recordings prove that. Every night. Always. Now, every time I get into the cruiser, I feel it before I see it. That weight, that presence, that patience. And every time, I fight the urge to look over at the passenger seat. Because I know if I do, I'll see it. Hunched, waiting, watching. And the dash cam will record it anyway. Because it's always there. Always waiting. Always patient. And I can't get rid of it. I can't leave it behind. It knows me too well. Knows my habits. Knows my name. Knows when I sleep. Knows when I drive. Knows when I think I'm alone. I keep telling myself it's just a trick. Just fatigue. Just stress. But the recordings don't lie. And I know one day, if I keep watching, if I keep seeing it every night, I won't be able to ignore it anymore. I'll have to face it. And I'm not sure I want to. It was a quiet night. The kind of quiet that sits heavy over the city and presses against the windows of your cruiser. The streets were almost empty. Just the occasional hum of a distant engine or the faint whisper of tires on wet asphalt. I was parked on a side street, running through paperwork in the glow of the dash lights, when it came through the radio. Unit 6, requesting backup. Old gas station, immediate assistance. I froze. The voice was calm, steady but urgent, familiar enough to set off a little alarm in my head, though I didn't recognize it. I checked the call log. Unit 6? There is no Unit 6. No one assigned that number. Not tonight. Not ever, as far as I knew. I asked over the radio, trying to keep my tone casual, professional. Unit 6 copy. What's your status? Location. Static answer first. Then the voice again, clear and close, almost as if it were sitting right beside me. Old gas station, need backup now. My stomach dropped. I felt that familiar pull in my chest. The same one that comes before something goes wrong. I checked my GPS, pulled up the old gas station on the outskirts of town. Abandoned, boarded windows, rusted pumps, no lights, not a soul. I grabbed my flashlight and keys, my hand shaking just enough to make the metal of my gun cold and slick under my fingers. I tried the radio again. Unit 6, this is Matthews. Backup is on the way. Identify yourself. Silence. Then the voice, softer this time, almost a whisper. Hurry. I cursed under my breath. A prank? Maybe. But something in the tone, it wasn't laughing. It wasn't joking. It was desperate. Human, but not quite. I shook it off, telling myself to stay professional. Stay calm. I drove toward the gas station. Engine quiet. Headlights slicing through fog that had started rolling in from the west. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt. Cold, damp, almost like walking through water. The gas station loomed ahead, dark, skeletal, abandoned. The pumps leaned to one side, glass cracked and dirty. I slowed to a stop, scanning the parking lot with my flashlight. Nothing moved. No cars. No footprints. Not a sound except the soft whisper of the wind through the empty canopy. I called it in again, voice steady even as my hands trembled. Dispatch! I'm on scene at the old gas station. No Unit 6 present. Area looks clear. Requesting advise. The dispatcher paused, calm but cautious. Unit 6? There's no Unit 6 logged in. Are you sure you got the call correct, Matthews? Yes, I said firmly, feeling a bead of sweat slide down my temple. Clear as day. Someone requested backup from this location. Unit 6. Static crackled, then the voice again, closer, sharper. Hurry! I spun, flashlight sweeping the asphalt and the forested lot beyond. Nothing, just the long shadows of the pumps and the skeletal canopy. My chest tightened. That whisper wasn't carried over the radio anymore. It was here, somewhere, close, pressing against the edge of my awareness. I stepped toward the station slowly, boots crunching on gravel. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to call it in as a false alarm. But something, I don't know what, pushed me forward. The voice again, insistent. Unit 6, hurry please. I shone the flashlight through the cracked glass of the office door. Dust motes danced in the beam. Inside, old paper scattered, yellow with age, rusted chairs. The air smelled of decay, mold, and something metallic. But no one, nothing alive. Yet the voice persisted, soft, mournful, and closer than it should have been. I circled the building, checking behind the pumps, around the sides. My radio stayed dead, except for those brief, haunting bursts of the call for help. Every time I reached a new angle, the voice seemed closer, echoing from the shadows, almost right next to me, even though nothing was there. Then I noticed the floor, near the pumps, faint but clear, tire marks in the gravel. Fresh, not deep, but enough to be noticeable, leading from the road to the station. And then they stopped, like the vehicle had vanished into thin air. I swallowed hard, my stomach churned, my breath fogged in the cold air. I checked behind the pumps again. Nothing, not a vehicle, not a shadow, nothing, just the tire marks, leading to a door, stopping at the cracked concrete of the abandoned lot, and the whispering voice still calling my name. Not exactly my name, but close enough. Matthews, hurry. I stepped back, flashlight trembling in my hand. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had been playing a prank, leaving tire marks for effect. But then I realized even a prank wouldn't explain the voice. Not the way it sounded. Not the way it came from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I started to walk back toward my cruiser, hoping to call it in one more time. That's when I saw it, or thought I did. At the edge of the lot, shadow beneath the trees, a figure, just a silhouette, standing perfectly still, watching me. I froze. My mind raced, heart hammering, eyes straining through the darkness. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, waiting. I called over the radio, voice sharp. Unit 6, identify yourself. I need a location. No response, just a whisper carried through the wind. Hurry. The figure shifted slightly, a glint of metal reflecting faint moonlight. My pulse spiked. I couldn't make it out fully, but the shape, it wasn't right. Too thin, too elongated, like it had been stretched. The shadows seemed to bend around it unnaturally, as if the night itself were holding it in place. I felt the hairs on my neck rise. My flashlight beam trembled over the figure, catching brief glimpses of its outline. No face, just a dark smear of a body, too still to be human. And then it vanished, not running, not ducking, just gone. The voice came again, closer now, almost inside my head. Unit 6, hurry. I spun, scanning the lot, checking the trees, the pumps, the building. Nothing, only the fog, thick now, curling like fingers over the asphalt. My boots crunched on the gravel as I stepped backward toward the cruiser. Every nerve screamed at me to leave, to get out of there, but I couldn't. Not yet. Something wanted me to see. Something wanted me to know it was there. I called it in one last time. Dispatch, I don't know what's going on. No Unit 6. Someone's here. Or something. I'm on scene, requesting immediate backup. The dispatcher hesitated. Then, Matthews, you need to get out of there. Now! I didn't wait. I sprinted to the cruiser. Doors slamming shut behind me. Engine roared to life. Tires skidding on gravel. As I pulled out, I glanced back once. The figure wasn't there. The tire marks remained. Leading to nowhere, the fog thickened, hugging the lot like it was swallowing the building whole. And somewhere in that fog, the voice called again. Unit 6, hurry. I haven't been able to shake it since. The call, the voice, the empty lot, and the knowledge that someone or something is still out there, waiting, watching. Every time I drive past that old gas station, I feel it, that presence, that insistence. And every time the radio crackles, though the frequencies are clear, I find myself expecting it, waiting for that call, that plea, that impossible voice from a unit that doesn't exist. And I know it's only a matter of time before it calls again. I couldn't shake it. The call from Unit 6, that voice, that impossible plea echoing through the radio. It had burrowed into my brain, gnawing, twisting, and no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, I couldn't. Something was wrong. I knew it. The next day, I traced the call through the system, hoping to find a pattern, a source, something concrete I could follow. Dispatch ran the logs with me, frowning at every turn. The signal wasn't coming from any active unit, not registered, not online, nothing. But there was a faint digital signature hidden under the interference. Old, almost buried, like a ghost buried beneath layers of time. I traced it backward, signal by signal, hopping through lines, nodes, anything I could get. Each hop led to a dead end, or at least what looked like a dead end, until I hit a line that didn't exist anymore. A disconnected phone line. From 1998, 22 years. Disconnected, dead, obsolete. There should have been nothing. But the signal, my voice crackling through static, tracing it to a dead line from 2 decades ago. I sat in the station, staring at the diagram on my screen. My hands were trembling, though I didn't notice at first. I traced the route again and again, each time the same result. It always led back to the same place, the same disconnected line. I tried to rationalize it. Old wiring interference, some glitch in the system. But I know my radios. I know the frequencies. This wasn't a glitch. Not anymore. I left the station and drove to the address that the line had been registered under. It was an old neighborhood, mostly abandoned, houses boarded up, weeds crawling through cracked sidewalks, the scent of rot and decay in the air. At the end of the street, a house stood alone, the windows dark, the paint peeling in strips like it was trying to slough off years of neglect. The number on the mailbox matched the one in the records, 1998. I felt my chest tighten. My fingers clutched the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I took a step out of the cruiser, boots crunching on the gravel, and the air felt different. Heavy, waiting, pressed against my skin. The house was silent. No wind, no movement, just a faint, lingering scent of damp wood and mold. I walked around the side, flashlight cutting through shadows that seemed thicker here than anywhere else. The ground was soft, but in places, I could see where something or someone had walked. Tracks, not fresh, not recent, but present, pressed into the mud like echoes of the past. I went inside. Door creaked under my weight. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight. Broken furniture, overturned chairs, peeling wallpaper, decades of neglect packed into the corners. The air smelled older here, like the house itself was holding on to memory. And maybe it was. I followed the wiring wherever I could. Old phone lines snaked along the walls, mostly cut, mostly dead, but still there. I traced them to the back of the house, where a small boarded window let in just enough light to see a faded telephone mounted on the wall. Yellowed plastic, a rotary dial. Dead, disconnected, and yet the signal traced back here. My signal, my voice, my name echoing through something long gone. I touched the receiver. Cold, metallic, solid. My pulse quickened. I pressed it to my ear. Silence. At first, I thought nothing was happening. Then a whisper, low, faint, familiar, the same desperate urgency I had heard over the radio. Matthews. I dropped the phone. My heart hammered. My hands shook. This was impossible. The line had been dead for decades. There was no way, no physical route for this voice to reach me. Yet it had. Somehow, I tried to convince myself it was stress. The call, the old neighborhood, the abandoned house, my own exhaustion. But even as I rationalized, I could feel it. Watching, waiting, not from the room, not from the house, but somewhere in the space between. The air itself felt alive, pressing against me, tightening around my chest. I backed out of the house, slowly, trying to keep control. My flashlight caught the shadows again. Shapes leaning, stretching, but nothing solid, nothing real. And yet, the feeling of eyes following me persisted. I could hear my own breathing, shallow, fast. And the whisper followed, softer now but unmistakable. Matthews. Outside, the sun had begun to set. The fog started rolling in from the west, curling around the empty streets. I got back in my cruiser, doors locked, engine humming as I tried to regain a sense of reality. But the thought wouldn't leave me. How? How was a line from 1998 still speaking? How could a voice exist where no conduit should be? I drove back slowly, scanning the empty street for movement, any sign of life. But there was none, only the thickening fog, the smell of rot, and the lingering echo of my name. It followed me all the way to the station. I reported what I had found, or rather, what I hadn't found, to my sergeant. Tried to explain it in measured words, careful, professional. It traces back to a disconnected line. Nothing active, no Unit 6, no one there for decades. He frowned, skeptical. Unit 6? Dead lines? Matthews, are you feeling all right? I forced a smile. I'm fine. Just try and make sense of it. But I wasn't fine. Not really. That voice, that impossible connection to a past that shouldn't exist. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the house, the yellowed phone, the line stretching through decades, carrying my name, my voice, my desperation, perhaps, and the whisper, patient, persistent, pressing. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined a rotary dial spinning, the line crackling with static, the whisper calling. I tried to cover my ears, tried to block it out, but it was in my head now, integrated, a part of me. By morning, I was exhausted. My hands shook from too much coffee, from adrenaline, from the lingering fear that something was wrong, that I had traced it, and by tracing it, I had awakened it, or at least revealed it. I started checking the lines, the old network, anything that might connect to 1998. Every attempt came up dead. Offline. Cut. Gone. Yet the signal still existed. Somehow. Somewhere. And the whisper followed me. Always soft, patient. Waiting for me to return. I realized then that this wasn't a normal case. Not an accident. Not a prank. Not a malfunction. This was something else. Something that had slipped through time, through the lines, through reality itself, and wanted to reach me. And I knew it wouldn't stop until it did. It started subtly at first. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing old case files, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead pressing against my temples, when the radio buzzed. Not the usual static, not a call for service, but something else. Softer, intimate, familiar. Claire, I froze. The voice wasn't distorted, wasn't distant like a call over the radio. It was clear, precise, as if the speaker were standing right next to me. My name, my real name. Nobody on the force, or anyone I knew, used it anymore. Only family, rarely. And even then, not like that. I grabbed the mic, hand trembling, trying to sound professional. This is Matthews. Claire Matthews. Who's this? Over. Silence. Then a soft exhale. And then the whisper again. Claire, sitting at your desk. Paper stacked on the left. The lamp turned to the right. Your coffee cup, half full, the one with the chip on the rim. I stared at the cup, half full, the chip jagged at the edge. How could they? My pulse hammered in my ears. Every rational thought fled. I looked around the office, half expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. But there was no one, just the dim glow of the lamp, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the faint scent of stale coffee. Who is this? I asked again, voice firmer, trying to steady it. The radio crackled. A soft, cold laugh. Then, I can see you. Every file, every note, every scratch on your desk. Every time you glance at the phone, I see it. I dropped the mic. My hands shook uncontrollably. The office suddenly felt smaller, pressing on all sides. My chest tightened, like the air itself had weight. I wanted to run, to leave, to scream, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I understood what was happening. I checked the logs, thinking someone had hijacked the radio, some prank. But nothing. No interference. No outside signal. Just the voice. Clear, detailed, unmistakable. My name, my desk, my things. How could they know? How can anyone know? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had been watching me. Cameras. A recording. But the level of detail, my desk exactly as it was in that moment, impossible. They couldn't have known. Nobody could. Then the radio buzzed again. I see your pen, the one you never use. The scratches along the side. The corner of your notebook bent. You always start with the left page, like last night. I swallowed hard, staring at the notebook on my desk. Bent corner. Left page. I hadn't even realized I'd been doing it. Not consciously. Not anyone else. Only me. And yet, here was someone, or something, reciting it back to me over the radio. I backed away from the desk. Heart hammering. The hum of the fluorescent lights suddenly felt oppressive. Too loud. Too close. I tried to think. Tried to ground myself. Tried to remind myself I was trained. That I knew what was real. But reality itself felt frayed. I don't understand. Who is this? What do you want? My voice sounded small in the empty office. Everything I want is already here. The radio crackled softly, and suddenly I felt it. A presence. Not physical. Not solid. But near. Watching. Waiting. My skin pricked. Goose flesh rising along my arms and neck. I could feel it leaning just slightly toward me, shifting in the unseen space beside my desk. The radio buzzed again, slower this time, deliberate. Claire, see the window? Third pane from the left, the streak. Water or tears? Can you smell it? Damp, old, like your father's garden in the spring. You remember that, don't you? I froze. I hadn't thought of that garden in years. Not consciously. Not since my father died. And yet the voice knew. Every detail. Every memory tucked away in my mind. And worse, it didn't just know. It described it, summoned it, made it exist in this room, in this moment. I backed away, heart hammering, tried to reason, tried to think. This had to be interference. Static. Someone using recordings, a trick of the radio waves. But deep down I knew there was no rational explanation left. The voice came again. Yes, I know every habit, every thought you try to hide, every corner you avoid, every drawer you never open, every file you fear to touch. I pressed my back to the wall, staring at the desk, the notebook, the coffee cup, all of it suddenly alive with meaning. The radio static buzzed lightly as if breathing. My own breathing sounded loud, too loud, and still the voice. Calm, patient, observant, never hurried, always present. I don't know what this is. I don't know who you are. Stop. The reply came immediately, like it had been waiting, coiled in the static. Stop? Why would I stop? This is only the beginning. I know your office better than you do. Claire, every scratch on the floor, every mark on the wall, every shadow, every whisper. Shadows, whispers. I felt the weight in the room shift again, like it was leaning closer, pressing into the corners. My eyes darted to the shadows along the walls. Nothing moved, nothing visible, yet I felt them all around me, closer than the walls themselves. I picked up my notebook, hoping to write it down, to anchor myself in reality. The pen felt heavy in my hand. trembling as I tried to scribble details. Every word felt inadequate. Every mark on the page seemed to fade almost as I wrote it. The voice came again, softer this time, almost affectionate. That's it. Hold the line, Claire. Watch. Listen. Everything you see, everything you hear, it's mine to witness to. I am here. Always. I dropped the pen. My hand shook. My chest heaved. The hum of the fluorescent lights suddenly dipped in a way that made the room feel hollow, like the air itself had been pulled from the walls. I could feel in the room now, not just a voice, not just a radio, something unseen, watching, breathing, waiting. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run. But the pull, it wasn't physical. It was deeper, rooted in my mind, anchored in fear, anchored in familiarity, anchored in the way the voice knew me. Everything. The radio buzzed once more, closer this time, almost inside my skull. Yes, that's it. Remember your desk, the coffee cup, the papers, the lamp, every detail. And do not forget, I see you. I shivered. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. My own office, every detail familiar, suddenly alien. Every corner of the room had weight. Every shadow had intent. Every object was alive in a way I couldn't explain. I tried to speak again, to demand it stop. Who are you? Why are you doing this? No answer, only static, soft, patient, and then, you are part of the line now, part of the witness, part of the record. Every thought, every memory. I am here, always, waiting, watching. And just like that, it ended. The static died. The hum of the lights returned to normal. My heart raced. The office felt empty. And yet, I knew it wasn't. Not empty. Not gone. Just patient. Waiting for the next call. The next whisper. The next opportunity to remind me it was there. I sat back, hands trembling, staring at my desk, at the notebook, at the coffee cup, at everything I had taken for granted. The radio sat silent, lifeless, ordinary. And yet, I could still feel it, leaning in the corners of the room, watching, listening, holding the line. I haven't been able to sit at that desk since, not without expecting it to speak, not without expecting the voice to know my thoughts before I even think them, not without expecting that patient, unwavering presence leaning just beyond the edges of my awareness. Every time I pick up the pen, every time I touch the notebook, every time I glance at the lamp, I feel it, and I know it's waiting for the next line to open, waiting for the next word, waiting to remind me it knows everything. And I don't know if I want to hear it again. I thought I was alone. I thought it had stopped after the radio calls, after the whispers had bled into every corner of my office, after tracing the impossible line from 1998. I tried to ground myself. I stayed busy, ran files, left my office lights on, checked my radios, and kept the headset close, always close. It was my tether, my warning, my only line to sanity. That night, the air was heavy, the kind of heavy that presses against your skin and squeezes your chest. Fog rolled in thick from the river, curling around the station like it was alive, like it had intent. I was alone, or I thought I was. My desk was cluttered with notes, wires, and coffee cups. My headset sitting on top, mic extended. The radio buzzed. Faint at first, static, almost polite, and then my name, Claire. I froze, my hands hovering over the desk, my pulse hammering in my ears. Not over the radio this time, not through interference. No, it was clear, sharp, patient, my name. And then, look outside. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, but I couldn't stop. I reached a window, yanked aside the blinds, and the parking lot stretched out in fog and shadow. Empty, not a vehicle, not a figure, nothing, and yet the feeling of eyes, watching, waiting, just beyond the fog. I tightened my grip on the headset. I wasn't going to leave it behind. Not tonight. I needed it, needed that tether, needed to hear it if it came again. And I knew it would. It always came. Then I heard a knock. Sharp, single, echoing through the station. My head snapped toward the door. Nothing moved in the fog. Nothing stirred. My throat went dry. My heart rattled in my chest. I told myself it was the wind, a branch against the building, anything rational. But the knock came again, louder, deliberate. I picked up the headset, mic close to my mouth. Who's there? Identify yourself. Over. Silence. Only static. Only the faint buzz that seemed to pulse with life, like it was breathing in time with me. Then, softer, patient, deliberate. You shouldn't have stayed. You shouldn't have answered. I swallowed hard, gripping the desk. My eyes darted around. The office felt smaller, the walls closer, the shadows longer. My lamp flickered. The fluorescent lights hummed and dipped, shallow, uneven, and the air itself felt thick, solid, almost pressing against me. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone was here. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe a break-in. But the voice, my thoughts, my name, echoing back at me in perfect clarity, it wasn't human. Not anyone I knew. Not anyone I could have imagined. The radio buzzed again, louder. The voice this time was calm, almost satisfied. You hear them coming, Claire. Back up soon. But not for you. I didn't move. Couldn't. I could hear sirens in the distance. Faint at first, but growing. My hands gripped the desk. I tried to call on myself, to explain, to anchor the reality of it. But the headset was alive, transmitting only one direction. Only them. Not me. The fog pressed against the windows now, curling tendrils of shadow that seemed to move with purpose. I could feel them wrapping around the station, around the building, around me. My breath came in short, sharp bursts, my ears ringing from the hum of the lights. The subtle vibration of the headset in my hand. The radio crackled. Clear, unmistakable. Claire, the line is open. Always open. Always. I pressed it to my ear. My office, the clutter, the notes, the lamp, the coffee cup, was suddenly alive with meaning. Every object, every shadow, every corner had intent. Watching, waiting, listening. The voice carried through, patient, omnipresent. I couldn't move. I couldn't leave. I couldn't breathe. Then the sirens grew louder. Relief washed through me for a moment. Backup. Someone else. Someone human. But the relief twisted into fear. A sharp spike of instinct. I knew they would find only this, the headset, still transmitting. And me, gone. I tried to leave. Tried to step away from the desk. To run to the door. But my legs didn't respond the way I expected. My body felt heavier, anchored, trapped. The shadows shifted along the walls, folding, stretching, elongating toward me. Not solid, but more real than air, more real than my own skin. The radio buzzed once more, a soft, deliberate pulse. Hold the line. Claire, hold the line. And then the room went silent. Not just the radio, not just the lights. The silence was thick, solid almost. Every sound from the station, from the outside, from my own body, gone. My pulse pounding in my ears, the blood rushing in my head, became the only sound. My eyes darted toward the windows. Fog, shadows, waiting, watching, nothing else. The sirens were closer now. I could see the lights of the cruisers through the fog. Relief again. Relief that turned to horror, because I knew they wouldn't see me. I knew they would find only the evidence of my presence, only the tether I had held on to, only the headset still transmitting. I pressed the mic one last time, voice shaking, breaking. I'm here, please, over. Static answered. The voice, patient and calm, came back. Yes, you're here. Always here. Holding the line. Forever. I couldn't move. I couldn't respond. The shadows pressed closer, brushing the edge of my vision, curling around me. Cold, solid, watching, waiting. The fog outside thickened. The lights of the cruisers grew faint, distorted, like they were being swallowed. Then nothing. Not silence. Not emptiness. Something worse. Absence. A space where I should have been. Where my body should have been. Where my heartbeat should have been. Gone. And yet the headset hummed. Transmitting. My voice. My last words. My plea. frozen in static, reaching out, tethered to nothing. The cruisers arrived moments later. The doors swung open. Officers poured in, flashlights cutting through fog, their voices calling my name. Claire, Matthews, where are you? They found the office, found the desk, found the lamp tilted to the right, the notebook on the left page, corners bent, the coffee cup half full, chipped on the rim, and the headset on, mic live, humming softly, my voice trailing, echoing in the room. They called in the scene. Backup, dispatch, everyone. But I was gone. Not hidden, not outside, not anywhere. Just gone. The headset alone, my tether, still transmitting, holding the line. Always. Patient. Waiting. Days later, they still talk about it. My files, my office, the headset, and the voice. Some say it was stress. Some say it was fear. Some say it was a hallucination. But the recordings remain. Static. Humming. And every so often, someone hears my voice whisper my name through the headset. And I don't know where I am. Don't know if I exist outside the static. Don't know if I'm waiting or if I've always been waiting. Only that the line is open. Only that I can't hear them. Only that the voice is patient. And the line is forever held. And somewhere through the fog, through the shadows, through the whispers, I know it's watching, waiting, and I am still listening. I don't even know why we were sent here. Maybe it was the kind of assignment no one else wanted. My partner, Lewis, kept muttering under his breath about how off the books this looked. But me? I'd seen weird towns before, backwater places that smelled of rot and old secrets. Nothing could have prepared me for Sable Hollow. We drove in silence, the headlights cutting through a fog, so thick it felt like we were pushing through cotton. Every mile of road seemed endless. I kept checking the GPS, though I knew it wouldn't help. The little screen kept flicking between searching and no signal. At first, I thought it was just a dead zone, normal for backwoods areas. But then after hours of driving, I realized the road didn't exist on any map. None. Not even the county lines. Lewis broke the silence. Are we even supposed to be here? His voice sounded smaller than usual, like the fog had swallowed some of it. I didn't answer. What could I say? We were following a tip. Something about a missing person, a town no one had ever heard of. But the thing about tips like this, they always smell wrong. Finally, the road ended. Not in a town sign, not even a welcome board. Just a curve that opened onto a stretch of cracked asphalt leading into shadows. Trees lined both sides, skeletal and gnarled, their branches tangled like arthritic fingers reaching for us. And then the town appeared. Sable Hollow. That's what the mailbox said. The letters were faded, peeling but unmistakable. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not just quiet, but a kind of living silence. The kind that makes you tense your muscles without realizing it. No birds. No wind rustling leaves. Even the fog felt thicker here, denser, as if it was deliberately hiding something. I stepped out of the car. The gravel crunched under my boots. Lewis followed, flashlight raised, hand resting on his holster. I could feel my own heartbeat like a drum in my chest. This place isn't on any map, I said, almost to myself. Lewis nodded, but he didn't speak. He never does, really. Quiet, observant. Sometimes I think that's why we work together. Though right now, the quiet felt wrong. Heavy, like it was pressing against my skin. The houses were old. Way older than the kind of American suburb you'd expect to see abandoned, would darken and warped by years of rain. Shingles curling like brittle fingernails. Windows were dark, some cracked, some boarded up. A few had curtains, yellowed and stiff, swaying slightly in a wind I couldn't feel. And yet there was a smell, earthy, iron-tinged. Something was decaying, but not just wood, something else. Something that made my stomach turn just a little. We walked further in, lights cutting through the fog. Every shadow felt alive. I kept expecting to see someone, anyone, maybe a kid running past, an old man shaking a fist, a dog barking, but the streets were empty, not even a car, nothing, just fog, silence, and the hollow echo of our footsteps. I found the town square eventually. It had a fountain, dry, cracked, stone edges stained with moss, but the statue in the center made me freeze. A figure, draped in flowing robes, face featureless. I blinked again. It was like the stone had been worn down not by time, but by some deliberate erasure. Someone wanted that face gone, or maybe never wanted it there in the first place. Lewis cleared his throat behind me. "This feels wrong," he said, and this time I could hear the tremor in his voice. I didn't answer. I was already thinking about the missing person report, trying to anchor myself in something real, but even that didn't make sense. If someone lived here, where were they hiding? And if no one lived here, why was there mail? The mailbox at the edge of town wasn't just decorative. It was full. Letters, unopened, curling with age. I picked one up. The envelope had no address, no name, just a single word, handwritten, in jagged script. Leave. I swallowed hard. "This isn't funny," I muttered, tossing it back. Lewis didn't laugh. He looked pale, jaw tight, scanning the empty streets. We split up, not officially, just instinctively, moving slow, checking side streets, alleyways, the old shops. The air smelled worse the further we went, like something had died recently. But not animal, not completely natural. My throat tightened. I tried to tell myself it was imagination, the way my brain reacts in abandoned places. But every sense screamed otherwise. I found a diner next, or what had once been a diner. Neon letters hung crookedly. Hollow EATS. The glass door was filthy, smeared with what looked like handprints from years of rain. Inside, the booths were empty, menus yellowed, coffee cups still on tables, as if someone had just left. I ran my finger along the counter. Dust, thick, almost powdery. Yet something in the back, behind the kitchen doors, gave me pause. A faint movement, a shadow. I shook my head. Lewis' voice came through the fog, distant but urgent. "Nimra, over here." I ran back toward him. He was standing near a house, eyes wide, flashlight trembling in his grip. I think someone's inside. The house was old, Victorian, leaning slightly to one side, windows dark. But one upstairs window had a faint flicker of light, not electrical, candlelight, warm but fleeting. I swallowed hard. "We knock." Lewis shook his head. "We shouldn't even be here." But I had already started up the steps. Every step creaked, groaned. My boots felt heavier than usual, like the stairs were resisting me. And then I heard it, a whisper, not words, not language, but a sound that made the skin on my arms crawl. From inside, from the shadows. "Come closer." I froze. Lewis grabbed my arm. "Nimra, don't." But I couldn't move. Something in me wanted to see, to understand. My hand reached for the door. Rusted lock. I pushed. The door groaned open. The interior was dark, but the candle flicker revealed the outlines of furniture and figures. Motionless. Too still. Too human. Or maybe too not. Eyes seemed to glint in the half-light, just out of reach of my flashlight beam. I stepped inside. The smell hit me full force. Iron. Rot. Something wrong. Lewis came in behind me. "Nimra, we leave now. Please." I wanted to agree. I wanted to run. But the whispers were louder now, surrounding us, not from one source, but everywhere, pressing against my ears. "You shouldn't be here, but you can stay if you want." I stumbled back, heart hammering. The figures were moving, slow, deliberate, not human movements. A tableau of shadow and light, grotesque in its stillness. I realized then the town itself was watching us, waiting. The fog outside pressed against the windows like cold fingers, and I knew something I couldn't explain. Sable Hollow didn't want visitors, but it had ways of keeping them. Ways that didn't make sense. Not yet, but soon, very soon. Lewis grabbed my arm again, this time pulling hard. "We're done here. We're leaving." I didn't argue. The whispers followed us to the door, slipping through the cracks, curling around our necks. Outside, the fog swallowed us immediately. The town was quiet again, but the silence was different now. Heavier, watching, expecting. I glanced back once, and for a brief second, I thought I saw a figure in the distance. A child, maybe, pale and still, standing in the mist, watching us, waiting. We didn't speak until we were back in the car. The engine started, and the sound felt too loud, almost wrong in the dead silence of town. I stared out the windshield at the fog that clung to the edges of the road, trying to make sense of what we'd just seen. Sable Hollow wasn't on any map, and now I knew why. Some towns aren't meant to be found. Some towns aren't meant to let you leave. I can't tell you why I started noticing it at first. Maybe it was the fog still clinging to Sable Hollow, sticking to my thoughts, pressing down on my chest. Or maybe it was the kind of sound that creeps under your skin before your mind realizes it's there. Either way, the bell started ringing at the same time every night, 3:07. The first time, I thought I was dreaming. I woke up to it, a deep, hollow tone that vibrated in my skull. Not a chime, not a ring. Something heavier, darker, like metal dragged through water. I looked at the clock, blinking hard. 3:07. I laughed at myself, thinking I'd imagined it. But the next night, the same sound. Same time. Lewis refused to believe me. "You're tired," he said. "Stress, bad coffee, the fog getting in your head. It's nothing," but I knew it was something. And the part that terrified me most, we'd checked the church. Not just once, but twice. From top to bottom. From the basement to the roof. No bell tower. No bell. Nothing that could make that sound. Just the church. Stone walls, dust on the pews, and a coffin-shaped organ at the front that hadn't been played in decades. The third night, I stayed awake. I sat in the car outside the church. Flashlight on, gun in my lap, heart hammering. 3:06. 3:07. It rang. I froze. The sound rolled over the fog like waves in slow motion. Cold, deep, unearthly. My stomach turned. It didn't echo from the sky or the roof. It came from the ground, from inside the walls, from somewhere I couldn't see. Lewis was shaking. "Nimra, it's just, I don't." I held up my hand. "She'll listen." The bell rang again, this time longer, drawn out like a warning, like the sound was speaking in a language I almost understood. I felt it in my chest, a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. My knees went weak. I can't explain the logic that drove me to step inside the church that night. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe foolishness, maybe a deep part of me that wanted to understand the impossible. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Dust motes hung in the flashlight beam. The pews were empty. The air smelled of mildew and old wax. And the bell, the sound, it came again. 3:07. I swore the walls themselves were vibrating. My teeth felt loose, like the tone was scraping a crossbone. I moved toward the altar. The organ sat there, untouched. The stained glass windows cast colors and shapes that made no sense. A face here, a hand there, twisted in angles that weren't human. And then I saw it. Not a bell, not in shape, not in size, but a shadow, darker than the night, pulling at the center of the altar. It didn't have edges. It didn't move naturally, yet it was there, waiting, watching me. The bell rang again. I didn't flinch this time. I couldn't. I wanted to, but my body refused. I wanted to run, but something held me there. Something that whispered under the ringing. Not words. Not yet. Just the presence. Old, patient, angry, waiting for the right person to notice. I stumbled backward. The shadow flickered when I did, like it was aware of my fear. I ran to the door, out into the fog. My lungs burned. Lewis was there, face pale. "What is it?" he asked, voice trembling. I shook my head. "I don't know, but it's in the church." The next day, I tried to make sense of it. Newspapers, archives, old records, nothing. The town's history mentioned the church, of course, but never a bell, never a bell tower. Nothing about strange sounds or missing people connected to 3:07. It was as if the town itself had erased it from memory, leaving only the sound behind. I started noticing things that weren't right elsewhere, too. Footsteps in the fog when no one was there. Windows in houses that seemed to watch me. Children laughing somewhere I couldn't see. Always at odd hours. And always that bell in the back of my mind, ticking toward 307. That night, I stayed in the church again. Alone, Lewis refused to come. He said it was a bad idea. I knew it was, but I couldn't stop myself. There was a compulsion. I didn't want to see it. I wanted to understand it. 3:06. The fog pressed against the windows, thick and wet. I could hear the town breathing. My flashlight cast narrow beams over the pews, the organ, the altar. And then, 3:07, the bell struck. Not from the tower, not from the ceiling. From everywhere and nowhere. I felt the vibrations through the floor, the walls, even the air itself. And then I saw them. Figures, pale, barely human, slithering shadows that clung to the walls. They weren't solid, not completely. Their eyes, if you could call them that, glimmered with the faintest light. They moved with a sound, curling and stretching, whispering in tones that scraped at the edges of thought. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my voice was gone. My legs refused to obey. I could only watch. The figures circled the altar. They leaned closer, reaching but never touching. And the bell, it was in them, inside them, vibrating their forms in time with a dreadful rhythm. I thought about leaving. I thought about forgetting. But the sound, it burrowed into me. My chest, my skull, my bones. I realized then that Sable Hollow wasn't just a town. It was a trap. The bell was a heartbeat. And the heartbeat wanted me. Hours passed, or maybe seconds. Time didn't feel right there. The fog outside the church seemed to thicken and thin in waves. The figures never spoke, but the whispers got louder. I could feel memories that weren't mine brushing against my mind. Faces, places, moments of terror that didn't belong to me. The bell rang again. And each time, the weight on my chest increased until I was crawling, gasping, begging silently for it to stop. Then silence. The fog cleared just enough for me to stumble out. Lewis was waiting. He didn't ask. He didn't speak. He just pulled me into the car, closed the door, and we drove. I looked back once. The church sat there in the fog, still and empty, but I knew the bell hadn't stopped. It would ring again tonight, at 3:07. I tried to sleep in the car. I tried to think about anything else, but I could hear it, faintly at first, then growing, the tone digging into my bones. I pressed my hands over my ears. It didn't help. It never helps. The days that followed, I started noticing changes. My dreams were full of bell tones, shadows moving just beyond my vision, figures whispering my name. And when I woke, sometimes I thought I could still hear it, faint in the corners of the house, in the silence of the kitchen, behind the closed doors. Lewis started keeping distance. I don't blame him. The fog was getting inside him too. I could see it. The nights were longer now. The hours around 3:07 stretching into something elastic, impossible, horrifying. I can't tell anyone what I've seen. The words won't capture it. The sounds, the shadows, the way it watches and waits. There's nothing in human language for it. But I can tell you this. The bell isn't just a sound. It's a warning, or maybe an invitation. I don't know. I only know that Sable Hollow keeps its time, keeps its secrets, and keeps ringing its bell every night, 3:07. And I know if you ever hear it, if it finds you, there's nowhere to hide. Not inside the church, not outside it, not anywhere. I think about it constantly now, even when the sun is up, even when I'm far from the fog. I hear the faintest echo of it, like it's inside my head, keeping track of me, always at 3:07. I don't know how much longer I can resist. I don't know if anyone ever has. And every night, I think about walking back to the church, standing beneath the altar and letting it ring me in. But I don't. Not yet. It was a kind of foggy night that made the road disappear. Headlights cut through thick gray waves, and the edges of the world seemed to dissolve into nothing. I was driving slowly, trying to make sense of the town, the bell, the shadows, everything that had been creeping into my mind. Lewis was quiet, as always, gripping the wheel like he was holding onto some invisible lifeline. That's when I saw them. 2 children standing at the side of the road. Small figures huddled close, wet hair plastered to their faces. They wore coats too thin for the cold, shoes covered in mud. Their eyes were wide, staring at me as if they'd been waiting for this moment. Should we stop? Lewis asked, his voice low, cautious. I hesitated. Something in my gut screamed at me, but the human part, the part one thought I could still trust, told me to help them. Yeah, I said, we can't just drive past. The car slowed, tires crunching on the wet gravel. The fog seemed to push in closer, pressing against the headlights, blurring the edges of the children. They didn't move as we approached. They didn't wave or run. They just stood there silent. I rolled down the window. Hey, are you lost? My voice sounded strange to me, hollow, swallowed by the mist. One of the children nodded. A small girl, maybe 8. Her eyes were unnervingly still, like windows without reflections. The boy, slightly taller, didn't move at all, just stared. I unlocked the doors. They climbed in without a word. No thank you, no acknowledgement. Just climbed in, small hands gripping the edge of the seat. Lewis shot me a look I could feel in my chest. I ignored it. The instant they were in, I noticed no shadows. The fog outside swirled, but the interior of the car remained empty of theirs. I checked the floor, the seats. Even the light spilling from the dash didn't catch them. Nothing. Did you see that? I whispered. Lewis glanced over, frowning. See what? I shook my head. Nothing. Never mind. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not even a shadow. Children don't just not cast shadows. We drove on. The fog seemed thicker here, pressing against the windshield, muffling the engine. The kids didn't speak. They didn't ask where we were going. They just sat, hands folded, eyes staring straight ahead. I tried to make conversation, tried to fill the silence. Do you know where your parents are? I asked. The girl tilted her head slightly. No words. The boy's eyes flicked to me for a second, then back to the fog. Something in that glance, it wasn't human. It wasn't malicious. But it was wrong. I swallowed, tried to ignore it. Hours earlier, before the bell, before the fog, I had thought I understood fear. But this was a different kind of dread. Not the quick jolt that makes your heart pound. Not the scream you can shake off. This was slow, patient, a creeping weight that settled on your chest and refused to leave. I looked at Lewis again. His hands were tight on the wheel, jaw set, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. I knew he saw it too, but he wouldn't say it. Not yet. The road curved. Trees leaned in like they were trying to touch the car. Every branch seemed alive, scratching at the fog, trying to peel the world apart. And the children, they didn't flinch. They didn't even blink. Where did you find them? Lewis asked, voice low. By the road, I said, standing there. Didn't move when we got close. Just waiting. We drove further. I tried to keep my eyes on the road, but the fog was relentless. Every time I thought I could see something beyond the car, the edges blurred, and then I saw it, another figure, a child, alone, standing in the middle of the road. Same stillness, same lack of shadow. I slammed on the brakes. Tires skidded. Lewis cursed under his breath. The child didn't move, didn't cry, just stared. And then, as we got closer, it stepped aside, vanishing into the fog before we could reach it. The car was silent except for the engine. The two we had picked up didn't look back, didn't react, like they hadn't even noticed. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 3:07, the bell. My stomach twisted. The fog was thicker here. The road seemed endless. And the children, they felt like they belonged to this place, not to the world I knew. I don't like this, Lewis muttered. Neither did I, but we didn't turn around. We couldn't. Something in me, a part one didn't understand, kept me driving, like I was being guided, by the fog, by the bell, by the children themselves. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed. Time didn't feel right. I stopped trying to measure it. The road curved again. Trees leaned closer. Shadows, well, everything had shadows except the children. And every so often, I thought I saw shapes moving in the fog, just beyond the headlights. Faces, watching, waiting. Finally, we reached the edge of the town. Empty streets, abandoned houses. The church in the distance. The bell tower, or lack of one, loomed silently. I pulled over. The children didn't move. I tried to make them leave. Go. Find your parents. Run. They just looked at me, eyes wide, still, waiting. I opened the door. The fog poured in. Cold, wet, alive. And then they stepped out, feet on the pavement, but still no shadows. I watched them walk down the road, fading into fog. And I realized something I didn't want to admit. They weren't just lost. They weren't human in any way that made sense. They were something else. Something from the town. Something Sable Hollow had been keeping, shaping, waiting for. I slammed the door shut. Lewis leaned back, shaking his head. We shouldn't have stopped. I nodded. We didn't stop them. They stopped us. The car started again, engine roaring too loud in the fog. And then, from the distance, I thought I heard it. Laughter. Not the kind of laughter children make. Hollow, empty, echoing through the fog. I didn't look back. I didn't want to, but I knew. I knew they were following us. Always following. Even if we couldn't see them. Even if they didn't cast shadows. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the road, the fog, the children standing there, staring, waiting, and every time I opened them, I thought I saw them in the corner of my vision, out of the corner of reality. Lewis stayed in the room next to me, quiet, not sleeping either. I could hear his breathing. Sometimes, in the dead silence, I thought I heard something else. Small footsteps, a whisper, always distant, always near. I don't know how long it's been. Days? Weeks? Time doesn't matter here. Not in Sable Hollow. Not after the bell. Not after the children. Sometimes, I think I can hear them at night. Tiny feet on the pavement. Tiny whispers carried on the fog. Always watching. Waiting. Not hungry. Not angry, just waiting. I wonder if they even remember what it means to be human. If they ever were. Or if Sable Hollow made them something else entirely. Something patient. Something eternal. And I know one thing with certainty. If you pick up children like that on a foggy road, in a town that isn't on any map, you don't get to drive away. Not really. Not without carrying part of them inside you. I feel them. Always. At the edge of my vision. In the fog. In the silence. Always watching. Waiting. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if I'll see them again. But I do know this. They will never leave me. And I will never forget the way they didn't belong to this world. And yet somehow, I couldn't stop myself from picking them up. Sable Hollow doesn't forgive mistakes. And picking up the children, that was mine. The fog never lifted. Not really. Even when the sun tried to burn through it. Sable Hollow clung to a gray haze that made the world feel smaller, heavier, like we were being swallowed from all sides. By now, I was starting to lose track of time. Days felt like hours, nights like weeks. And every night, every single night, the town reminded me that we didn't belong. It started with the radios. I was leaning against the cruiser, trying to clear my head, when Lewis fiddled with a channel knob. He always liked to test the radios, check for signals, even though we knew the towers didn't reach here. I didn't pay much attention. Then I heard it, a hymn, soft at first, angelic almost, echoing through the static. But there was something wrong. The voices, they weren't human, not entirely. Hollow, broken, sliding in and out of frequencies. A chorus that warped in ways that made your stomach twist. Lewis froze, hand on the dial. I could see the tension in his jaw. I felt it too, creeping into my bones. Did you hear that? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. The hymn got louder, warped. Then, between the notes, something else. Screams. Tiny at first, high-pitched, desperate, and then lower, full of pain, echoing, reverberating, like the town itself was screaming. I gripped the radio, static buzzing against my fingers. My heart pounded. This wasn't interference. This wasn't someone playing a prank. This was alive. We need to move, Lewis said. His voice sounded small, fragile. I didn't argue, not because I wanted to, but because I felt it too. The wait, the watching. We drove slowly through the streets. The fog clung to the headlights, thick and wet, curling around the car like cold fingers. And then I saw them. Figures. At first, I thought it was a trick of the fog. Shadows stretched wrong across the road. Then they moved, not running, not walking, sliding, gliding, limbs stiff, unnatural, faces blurred, as if the wind had worn them down, erased their features. Hollow men, that's what they looked like. Empty shells of humans. And every step or slide made the static on the radio shift growl hum. I swallowed hard. My throat was tight. One of the figures raised a hand. Slow, deliberate. No eyes, no mouth. Just the shape of someone who might have once had a face. The radio crackled. A distorted him spiking into a scream. My ears rang. Drive. I said, voice trembling. Lewis nodded. Foot pressing the accelerator. Tires spat gravel. The hollow men moved aside, or maybe let us pass, but never left the road. Always at the edges of the headlights. Always sliding. Always watching. I couldn't look away. Even if I wanted to. They were familiar. Faces from my past. Twisted into something I didn't recognize. I thought I saw my father in one, eyes hollow, reaching. I shook my head. That's impossible. I don't know why I saw it. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe Sable Hollow was making me see things. Or maybe it always had. The radio screeched, to him breaking into jagged noise, 1,000 voices bleeding together. I wanted to turn it off. I wanted silence. But I couldn't. Something told me to listen. Something told me that if I stopped, I'd lose my mind completely. Another figure emerged from the fog. Closer this time. Taller. Limbs bending wrong. Head cocked at an angle that shouldn't exist. I could see through it, or at least I thought I could. A faint glimpse of emptiness, like staring into the hollow of a tree, but alive. And the radio, it sang again. A scream buried inside of him. The static carved itself into my skull. I swallowed hard. Lewis, what the hell is happening here? He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the road. But I knew he saw them too. The hollow men, sliding alongside the car, watching, waiting. I tried to make sense of it. Logic, reason. Sable Hollow had rules, I thought. Some pattern. The bell, the children, the fog, and now this. But every attempt at reasoning dissolved in the static. The hymn, the screams, the fog, the figures. Time didn't exist in that moment. Or maybe it existed too much. My pulse felt like it stretched across the universe. Slow, deliberate, unstoppable. One figure stepped closer. Not from the road. From the fog itself. I saw the space around it ripple. Like the air was bending to it. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its presence filled the car. Pressed against my chest. Pushed into my ears. I wanted to scream. My hands trembled on the wheel. The radio went silent. And in that silence, I could hear my own heartbeat. Then it started again. A low hum. A whisper. Join us. I jerked back. Lewis cursed. What did it say? I didn't answer. I couldn't. The figures were closer now. Sliding beside us. Not running. Not walking. Just existing. Hollow. Watching. And somehow I knew they were not just outside. They were inside. Inside the fog. Inside the radio. Inside my mind. The streets twisted. Roads bent in impossible angles. Houses appeared where they hadn't been before. Windows glimmered with light that wasn't natural. Stained glass from the church. Maybe, or maybe something else. Shapes flickered at the edges of the headlights. Faces. Twisted faces. Faces from dreams I hadn't had yet. I tried to speak. Words wouldn't come. My tongue felt heavy. Glued to the roof of my mouth. The hollow men pressed closer. Sliding, reaching, waiting. And every time they moved, the radio screamed. Hymns warped into screams. Screams warped into hymns. I could feel the weight of every scream, every note. Pushing, pulling, tearing at the edges of who I was. Who I thought I was. One figure leaned close to the window. I could see its empty sockets. Hollow eyes that weren't eyes. My reflection, or maybe not mine. Twisted, wrong. And the radio, it sang, my name, over and over. Distorted, warped, A hymn that was also a scream. My name, my name, my name. I swerved, tire skidding, gravel spraying. Lewis cursed again. Hold it together. I tried. I really tried. But the hollow men, they didn't falter. They slid with us. Outside the car. Inside the fog. Inside the sound. Inside my head. I thought about the children. No shadows. Waiting. Watching. Did they know these hollow men? Were they part of the same essence? I couldn't bear to think about it too long. My head threatened to split open from the static, the hymn, the screams. We came to a crossroads. Fog. So thick, I couldn't see my hands in front of my face. The hollow men blocked every possible path. Sliding closer. Static screaming to the radio, louder now, unbearable. I braked hard. Screeching tires. Lewis leaned back, panic in his eyes. We're trapped, he whispered. I knew he was right. Trapped. Sable Hollow doesn't let you leave. Not really. Not when it wants you. The hollow men weren't just out there. They were the town. The town was them. They were every scream, every hymn, every whisper that had chased me this far. And they knew we were afraid. I gripped the wheel, tried to think, tried to breathe, but the radio, it spoke again. My name, my fears, my regrets, my memories of mistakes I didn't think I had made. And in those echoes, I saw faces. Hollow men, children, the bell, the fog, all one, all waiting, all patient. And I understood something terrible. They weren't hunting us because they wanted to kill us. They were hunting us because they wanted us to see, to know, to understand that Sable Hollow doesn't forgive, doesn't release, doesn't forget. I looked at Lewis, his face pale, eyes wide. I could feel his fear, my own, and then to him, scream, static, everything collapsed into a single pulse, a heartbeat, deep, hollow, waiting, and the hollow men leaned closer, closer, closer. I screamed, or maybe I didn't. Maybe it wasn't my scream. Maybe it was theirs. And then the car lights went out. Only the fog, only the hollow men, only the radio, only the town. And I realized we had been part of it the whole time. Part of the hymn, part of the scream, part of the waiting. Sable Hollow doesn't let you leave. Not really. Not ever. We thought we could leave. I don't know why we thought that. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was some small, stubborn part of our minds that refused to accept Sable Hollow for what it was. The fog was thinner that morning, or maybe we'd just grown numb to it. The sun tried to burn through, weak and watery, but couldn't reach the road ahead. Just one more turn, I said. My voice was dry, brittle. I kept it low, half hoping Lewis wouldn't hear the tremor. He was already gripping the wheel, like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. The road stretched ahead, cracked and uneven. Gravel and weeds clawed through the asphalt. Nothing moved except the wind, or what I thought was wind, but the fog moved differently, alive, a slow wave pressing against the edges of our vision. We drove, hours, maybe minutes. Time had stopped making sense. Every mile we covered felt like the same mile. Every curve was the same curve. Every tree leaned the same way, branches twisting like arthritic fingers. And then it appeared, the sign, "Welcome to Sable Hollow." I froze. The tires hummed against the asphalt. My stomach pitched. My heart skipped. I looked at Lewis. His eyes were wide, pale, hollow. "No," he whispered. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The sign was identical. Same peeling letters. Same rust stains. Same mailbox with letters curled with age. The fog pressed closer, thickening like a curtain. We tried turning around. Left, right, U-turns, anything. Every road led back. Every turn brought us back to the same sign. I pressed my forehead against the wheel, breathing shallow. Tried to remember the miles behind us. Tried to recall landmarks, anything that would break the loop. But there were none. There were never any landmarks. Only the road, only the fog, only the town. "This isn't real," I whispered. "It can't be real." Lewis shook his head. "It's the town, the road. It's not letting us leave." I laughed then, a short, bitter laugh. "We're trapped," That's what you're saying. We're trapped, like, like rats in a maze. And we didn't even notice the walls. The fog pressed against the windshield like cold hands. I could see shapes in it, movement at the edges of the headlights, faces, twisted, impossible faces, children, hollow men, shadows of the bell tower that didn't exist. Every time I blinked, they were closer, waiting, smiling, watching. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles white. We're leaving, I said, not to Lewis, to myself, to someone, something, maybe the town itself. We're leaving. We tried the highway, the old bridge, the gravel paths we'd passed earlier. Every route circled back. Every mile ended at the sign. Always the sign. Always the fog. Always the feeling that the town was breathing around us, closing in. Hours, or maybe days, blurred together. My mind wasn't functioning properly anymore. Every sound was amplified. Every shadow a threat. The radio crackled, as if sensing my fear. No music this time. No him. No screams. Just static. And in the static, voices. Low murmurings at first. Then words. Stay. Don't leave. You belong. I slammed my hand down. The static hissed. Lewis cursed beside me. I don't care what it is. I'm getting us out of here. But he couldn't. Neither of us could. The car tires spun over asphalt that didn't exist. The road bent like it had its own mind, guiding us back to the town's entrance. I tried to reason, try to map it, think mathematically. But geometry in Sable Hollow doesn't obey rules. Angles don't exist. Distance is meaningless. The road is infinite. And yet, the sign is always the same distance away. I stopped the car once, hand shaking, tried to sleep, tried to close my eyes. But the fog seeped through the windows. Whispers, figures at the edge of vision, flickers of movement that vanished the moment I turned my head. The children, hollow men, shadows. I could feel them pressing in, waiting. Every time we thought of reversing course, every time we tried to escape, the road itself seemed to bend around us. We weren't driving. We were floating, floating in a loop, endless. And with each pass, the town seemed older. The sign peeling more, letters fading further. Mailboxes filled with new letters every time we passed. Though we hadn't seen anyone. Postmarks unreadable. Names that made no sense. Some letters were addressed to us. To me. Handwritten. Jagged. Demanding. I tried reading one. Only one word. Stay. My stomach turned. I crumpled in my hand. The fog outside churned as if the town had noticed. My reflection in the windshield wavered. Not my face. A hollowed version. Eyes empty. Lips cracked. And for a split second, I saw Lewis the same way. Hollowed. Waiting. And then it was gone. Only the car. Only the fog. Only the endless road. I can't describe how it feels to drive in circles when the world itself denies your perception. Hours collapse into minutes. Minutes into seconds. You forget the sun exists. You forget that time was ever linear. You forget yourself. Only the road, the sign, the fog. Only Sable Hollow. Lewis started talking then. Low, muttering. We should have left the children. We should have never gone to the church. We should have. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every thought led back to the sign. Every thought led back to the road. Every attempt at logic disintegrated like ash in the wind. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Not the sign. Not the fog. Not the road. Figures. Children. Hollow men. Standing along the roadside now. Watching. Waiting. Every pass they multiplied. I didn't see where they came from. They just were. And they followed us, silent. Faces featureless. Limbs bending wrong. Shadows that weren't shadows. I realized something terrible. Every loop, every pass made the town stronger. Made the watcher stronger. Made the fog thicker. Made the road longer. Made us smaller. Insignificant. Trapped. I pressed the accelerator. Tires skidded over gravel. The car rattled. Figures slid aside. But the sign, always the sign. And when we reached it again, I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive into the fog, into the unknown, into the nothing that might at least end the loop. But the fog pressed against us, alive, deliberate, and the sign remained, welcoming us home. I reached for the radio. Static, low murmurs, then a distorted voice. Not human, not entirely. Home. Lewis shook violently. "We have to stop," he said. But I knew we weren't stopping. Not here. Not now. Not ever. The road is Sable Hollow. The road is endless. And the sign is a promise. A warning. A trap. I thought about the children again. The ones with no shadows. Waiting. Watching. Hollow men sliding alongside us. Hymns in the radio. Screams in the fog. And I knew the town is alive. And it knows us. Knows our fear. Our hope. Our desperation. And it feeds on it. I stopped trying to turn. Stopped trying to reason. The road didn't bend. The road was reality. And we were already inside it. Already part of it. Already trapped. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. The sign. The fog. The endless loop. Tires spinning over gravel that will never end. And the watchers. Silent. Patient. Waiting. I don't know how long it's been. Days? Weeks? Time doesn't exist in Sable Hollow. Only the loops. Only the sign. Only the waiting. And every time I think we might have a chance, I look up and there it is. Welcome to Sable Hollow. And I realize the town isn't just a place. It's a sentence. A cycle. A trap. And the loop never ends. I can't leave. We can't leave. Not really. Not ever. I noticed it the first night around 2:14 a.m. At first, I thought it was my imagination. The streets were empty, fog curling around the edges of the cruiser, and headlights cut through like blades. But there it was, a black sedan. No markings, no plates I could make out, just a shadow in metal. Following me at a distance that was close enough to be threatening, but far enough to be deliberate. I tried to shake it, took a few turns, changed lanes, sped up. Every maneuver, every turn, the car stayed there. Silent, waiting, watching. Not a flicker of tail light. No one inside I could see. Just blackness. I pulled over at one point, heart hammering, hands gripping the wheel. The fog thickened, pressing against the windshield. The sedan stopped too, just a few feet behind me. And in the corner of my eye, I swear I saw a movement. Someone leaning forward, face pressed to the glass, not looking at me exactly, but past me, watching, calculating. I started driving again, slowly, deliberately. The road stretched out like it always did at that hour. Empty, silent, but the presence was constant. Tire hum, engine idle, and the black sedan always there. Never closer, never further. Just patient. I told myself it was nothing. Stress, fatigue, overwork, the early hours. Too many nights alone in the car. Too many long drives through quiet suburbs, empty industrial streets. But the feeling in my gut, that cold, sinking certainty that something wasn't right, wouldn't go away. The next night, same time, 2:14 a.m. I was parked at the edge of the industrial park, checking my report on the laptop, when I noticed it again. The headlights in the distance. The same black sedan, gliding silently toward me. My stomach turned. I knew it was the same car. I didn't even need to see the plates. The way it moved, the way it waited, was unmistakable. I watched it from behind the glass. Fog swallowed it partially, but the darkness of the vehicle seemed unnatural, almost alive. Every time it passed a street light, the shadows clung to it, draping over the hood and roof like liquid. And I swear, it wasn't just following me. It was moving when I moved, predicting me, waiting for me to look away. I left the park, tried driving a different route, took the long way around the industrial sector, through the old warehouse district, narrow streets, abandoned buildings. Nothing moved except me and the sedan, and every turn, every lane change, it was there, watching, waiting. I could feel its eyes even if I couldn't see them. The night stretched, each minute longer than the one before. Every streetlight pass felt like a heartbeat in slow motion. And all the while, that car, patient, silent, watching, waiting. I want to confront it. Wanted to flip on the siren, run the plates. But something told me it wasn't meant to be caught. Not tonight. Not ever. By the third night, 214 had become a clockwork horror. I could feel in my bones. My body tense an hour before. Every light flicker, every creak of the car, every distant sound amplified. The black sedan was a presence now, not just a vehicle. Following me, feeding on anxiety, the tension, the fear that grew in my chest. I started noticing things about the car. No reflections in the windows. Even the faintest gleam of headlights never caught its body in the right way. The metal was too black, absorbing the world around it. And the longer I stared, the more it felt like the car was moving with intent, thinking, not alive exactly, but aware, a predator, patient, waiting. Sometimes when I slowed down at a stoplight, I'd catch a flicker of a face, behind the windshield, shadows shifting, just for a second, never clear, never full, but enough to make my chest tighten, my throat close, my fingers clutch the wheel until they ached. I stopped telling anyone. Who would believe it? The partner on the radio, the dispatcher, even Lewis, if I told him, he'd call me paranoid. And maybe it was just stress. Long nights, isolation. But I knew the difference between paranoia and certainty. And this was certainty. I tried leaving town. Took the highways, the back roads. Every route, every detour. The car followed. Never too close. Never too far. Always at the edges of sight. And every time I glanced back, I felt that same cold certainty. It knew me, knew my habits, knew my patterns, knew when to appear, knew when to vanish behind the fog. Only to return the moment I looked away. I started recording the drives. Dash cam footage, night vision, infrared, every angle, every night. I reviewed the footage in my apartment. Every night, nothing. No car, no shadow, nothing on the recordings except the empty road. But I knew it was there, always there, waiting, watching, patient. I began to see it everywhere. In the fog, on the side streets, reflected in the rear view mirror, just at the corner of my vision. Sometimes I swear I saw it in the headlights of other cars or parked vehicles along the highway, even in broad daylight. I would blink and it was gone. The brain plays tricks. That's what I told myself. But the gut doesn't lie. By the fifth night, I couldn't sleep. Not really. Every shadow in my apartment, every creak of the building, every passing car, I expected it to be there. I felt it before I saw it. The black presence. Waiting. Patient. Watching. And every night at 2:14, like clockwork, it appeared. I started leaving notes for myself. Journals. Times. Locations. Speeds. Angles of turns. Anything to find a pattern. To understand. But the sedan was intelligent. Not human, not alive, but aware. Always shifting. Always just outside the pattern. Always waiting for me to make a mistake. To blink. To look away. I remember one night particularly clearly. Fog thick as wool. Engine low. Tires hissing on wet asphalt. 2:14. There it was, perfectly aligned behind me. I tried the headlights. High beams. Nothing. The car didn't react. It didn't move. Didn't even appear brighter. Just waiting. I reached for the radio. Tried to call in. Tried to report it. Static. Nothing. My own voice seemed distant. Echoing back at me, distorted. And then, just for a moment, I thought I saw a movement. A hand pressed against the glass. Pale. Thin. Veins dark in the dim light. Not human. Or maybe not fully. And then gone. Just the fog. Just the road. Just the waiting. I slammed the accelerator. Tried to lose it. Took a sharp turn into the industrial sector. Gravel sprayed. Tires skidded. And still, there it was. Always there. Always patient. Always waiting. I started hallucinating. Images in the fog. Shadows that stretched wrong. Shapes moving in the darkness that weren't cars. Children? Faces? Hollow eyes staring back at me? I don't know. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. All I knew was the car. The black sedan. Waiting. Watching. 2:14 a.m. every night. I tried confronting it once. Headlights blaring, horn honking, full siren. Nothing. No reaction. Just the road. Just the fog. And then, in the corner of my vision, a flicker. The car sliding alongside me. No sound, no wheels spinning. Just black. And when I looked directly, nothing. The sedan was gone. But I knew it had been there. I stopped trying to fight it. Started documenting. Every night, 2:14, dash cam rolling, engine idling, fog curling. I talk to myself now to stay sane. Tell myself I'm awake. That it's just a car. Just a shadow. Just nothing. But I know better. The shadow waits. The presence waits. And every night, I know will come. Sometimes, I imagine the road stretching endlessly, the fog thickening until it's the only thing that exists. And in that fog, the black sedan waits. Watching. Always watching. Patient. Timeless. I don't know what it wants. I don't know if it's human or alive or something else entirely. But I know one thing. The night is its domain. 2:14 a.m. is the hour it chooses. And every time it comes, waiting, patient, watching. And I don't think it's going away. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever. I shouldn't have reviewed the dashcam footage. Not alone. Not at 3 a.m. when the fog outside presses against the windows like a living thing. But I did. I always did every night. Because I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Proof that the black sedan existed. That it followed me. That it was real. What I saw, I can't unsee. The night started like any other. 2:14 a.m. The fog. Thick and oily, clinging to every surface. Tires humming against wet asphalt. The cruiser's headlights cutting through the mist like knives. I had the dashcam rolling, as always, though I doubted it would show anything. And yet, it did. The black sedan appeared, sliding into view like a shadow. Silent, patient, inevitable. I leaned closer, try to focus through the static glare of the night vision. And then, the driver. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a reflection, a shadow in the fog. But no, the man behind the wheel was me, or at least a version of me. Same eyes, same lines on the face, same curve of the jaw, but older, hollower, not quite human, not quite alive. I swallowed hard. My throat felt thick. My hands shook. No, I whispered. My voice was weak, cracked. It can't be. The dash cam caught him. Me, or something that used to be me, turning to look straight at the camera, directly at me. But it wasn't a glance of recognition. Not really. It was knowing, patient, empty, watching. I closed my eyes for a second, thinking if I just blinked, the footage would vanish. But when I opened them, he was still there. The sedan followed me with uncanny precision. Every turn, every lane change, mirrored, like it anticipated my moves. Like it knew me better than I knew myself. I pressed pause, leaned back in my chair, try and steady my breathing. Sweat ran down my temples. My pulse hammered. I wanted to rationalize. Wanted to tell myself it was some digital glitch, a trick of the infrared, a distorted reflection in the lens. But my gut said otherwise. This wasn't a trick. This wasn't technical. This was real, or real enough to matter. I replayed it, slow motion, frame by frame, every detail horrifying, yet hypnotic. The man behind the wheel, my reflection, wasn't driving like me. He was studying me, waiting, calculating, patiently gliding behind, keeping the perfect distance, as if he were learning me, memorizing every habit, every reflex. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened. My hands trembled. And then I noticed something else. The eyes. My eyes. Or what looked like mine, only deeper, empty, hated, old. The weight of years I hadn't lived pressed into them. And yet I recognized a reflection. Knew it. Could feel in my bones. That man, that version of me, was me. And not me. Something I could become. Something I might already be. I shut the laptop, shaking. Needed air. Needed light. Needed to tell myself this wasn't real. But outside, the fog pressed harder. The headlights of the cruiser cutting through the mist seemed weak, fragile, as if the fog was swallowing everything it touched. And I could feel the presence. Waiting, patient, watching. Sleep didn't come. Not that night. Not the next. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, driving, sliding along behind me, silent, empty, patient, and every time I opened them, I half expected him to be there, half expected to see that hollow version of myself reflected in the rear view mirror. By the third night, I had to confront it, had to see if it was really me or what it was. I drove slowly through the fog, dash cam rolling, headlights weak against the thickness of the mist. And there it was, black sedan, sliding into view, silent, patient, waiting. I blinked, my reflection in the rear view mirror, not my reflection. Him, older, hollowed, waiting, watching. And this time I could hear it, or at least I thought I could, a low hum, distorted, not music, not radio, just presence, like the sound of someone breathing underwater. Slow, deliberate, and human. I pressed the accelerator, trying to outrun it. Tires screeched on wet asphalt. The sedan stayed the same distance behind me. And then, for a brief second, it leaned forward, head toward the glass. My eyes, empty, patient, waiting. I screamed, not out loud, but in my mind, a raw, desperate scream that shook my chest. And then nothing. Just fog, just road. Just a black sedan sliding in the distance, patient, silent, waiting. I pulled over to the side, hands gripping the wheel, tried to breathe, tried to convince myself I was hallucinating. But the dash cam footage confirmed it. There he was, me, or what I had been, or what I would become. I started noticing patterns, small things at first. Every time I drove, the sedan mimicked my turns. Every time I slowed, it slowed. Every time I blinked, it blinked. Not exactly, not perfectly, but close enough to make me feel hunted, studied, trapped. I couldn't sleep. Not really. Not alone. Not anywhere. Shadows moved differently now. Faces in windows. Glances in mirrors. Always just at the corner of my vision. And every night at 2:14 a.m., I could feel him. Patient. Waiting. Sliding silently behind. Reflecting me. Studying me. Learning me. I started carrying a recorder, hoping to catch something. Anything. Tried the radio. Static. Nothing. Except once the faint whisper. Low, deliberate, distorted. Almost a voice. Almost mine. Saying, watch yourself. I don't know if it was real. I don't know if I imagined it. But I could feel it. Could feel the presence of something I had been. Something I could become. Hollowed. Patient. Empty. Waiting. By the fifth night, I couldn't bear it. I had to confront it. I had to know if it was me. Or what it was. I drove the same route. Dash cam rolling. Heart hammering. Eyes scanning. The fog thickened. Headlights swallowed in mist. And there it was. The sedan. Sliding silently into view. Behind me. Always behind me. Always patient. Always waiting. I stopped the car. Hand shaking. Headlights on full. Heart in my throat. I pressed the horn. Nothing. I leaned forward, staring through the mist, and for a brief second, I saw him clearly. My reflection, not in the mirror, not through the glass. In the car, driving, sliding, waiting, hollowed, older, patient. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours, days. Time doesn't exist when you're staring at yourself becoming something else. And then, as if noticing my hesitation, the sedan slid forward, distance perfect, silent, watching, and disappeared into the fog. Sleep came hours later. Fitful, haunted, dreams of black metal gliding silently behind me. Eyes hollowed, patient, waiting, and when I woke, the fog pressed against the windows like fingers insistent, alive. I haven't driven alone since. Not at night. Not at 2:14. Not anywhere. The black sedan is patient. And I know it's waiting. Always behind me. Watching. Sliding. learning, teaching me what I could become. Every time I glance in a mirror, I flinch, because I know the hollow version of me is there, waiting, sliding, patient, watching. And if I blink too long, if I turn away, I fear it will step out of fog and into me. The dash cam footage remains on my laptop. I can't delete it. I can't stop looking at it, because it's proof that I am being followed by myself, or by what I used to be, proof that the night has a memory, that it remembers me, that it waits for me, patient, hollow, watching. And I don't know what happens if it catches up. I noticed a light the moment we drove past the motel, a single bulb, flickering, pale yellow, dangling from a rusted fixture above the entrance. The sign read vacancy, though half the letters had fallen years ago. The paint was chipped, faded, the windows boarded, closed for decades, or at least that's what the county record said. But the light, it pulsed, weak but alive, like a heartbeat trying to break free from some long-dead body. Lewis noticed it too. He slowed the cruiser. "That's impossible," he muttered. I nodded, my stomach tightening. It's been abandoned for years. We both knew the facts, the reports, the inspections. Empty for 10 years. Rats, graffiti, the occasional trespasser. Nothing worth mentioning. Nothing alive. And yet, the light kept flickering, almost beckoning. I parked a little way down the street, headlights illuminating the cracked asphalt. The motel sat behind a veil of fog. It wasn't the thick morning mist that rolled through town. It was older, heavier, a damp curtain that seemed to hold its breath. The flickering bulb was like a pulse in that dark, waiting silence. We stepped out, boots crunching gravel. The wind carried a faint odor, stale, metallic, like rust mixed with old wood, and something else I couldn't name, something sickly sweet. I swallowed, my throat dry. Lewis muttered again, something about checking it out, just to make sure it wasn't someone inside. I didn't argue, though I wanted to. My gut said leave. My gut said the light was a warning. The door was locked, old and warped. The lock rusted but intact. The bulb flickered faster as we approached, casting shadows that danced on the boarded windows. Shapes. Faces? I thought I saw shapes moving behind the boards. And then I realized the boards were nailed shut from the outside. Nobody should have been inside. Nobody. I stepped closer. The light flickered in time with my heartbeat. My shadow stretched along the cracked walls, long and thin, merging with the darkness beyond the door. I reached out to the handle. Cold metal, sticky with rust. My fingers trembled, and then I heard it, a soft sound, whispering, not words, just sound, faint, almost like the building exhaling. The boards creaked. A window rattled. My pulse spiked. I turned to Lewis. He was frozen, eyes wide. "You hear that?" I whispered. He nodded, lips tight. "Yeah." We moved around the side, looking for another way in. The motel was silent, but the air felt thick, alive, thick with waiting, heavy with something, watching. The flickering light above the entrance pulsed in rhythm with that feeling. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn and drive away, leave it to rot in its silence. But I couldn't. I had to know. I had to see. A side window had been broken long ago, the glass jagged, the frame warped. I leaned in, peering through the shards. Inside, darkness. Thick, heavy darkness that swallowed the weak light from outside. The lobby was empty, or at least it should have been. But then I saw it. Movement, just at the edge of perception. Something shifting in the darkness. Not human exactly. Not yet, but alive. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Lewis grabbed my arm. "It's just shadows. Light wind, maybe rats," he said. But I could see the doubt in his eyes. The same fear I felt clawing at my chest. We circled the building. Every boarded window seemed to contain something. Faces? Shapes? I couldn't be sure. My mind flickered with memories of every old horror movie I'd ever watched. Every story I'd ever heard about abandoned buildings and things that waited inside. But this wasn't fiction. It felt alive. Watching. Patient. Waiting. I found a side door rusted and warped. The lock was broken. It gave under my fingers. I hesitated, listening. Nothing. The whispering sound had stopped. But the light above the main entrance, it pulsed faster now, like it knew, like it was calling me closer. Inside smelled of rot, damp wood, and something else, something metallic. My boots scuffed the dusty floor. The air was thick. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, like the building itself was breathing. I could hear the floorboards creak as I moved. The walls groaned. The flickering light outside sent weak beams through the cracks in the boards, cutting jagged patterns across the floor. Lewis stayed close, flashlight in hand. His beam danced across the lobby. Broken chairs, torn wallpaper, debris scattered like the bones of forgotten lives. And then I saw it, a reflection, in the cracked mirror behind the front desk. Not ours, not exactly. A shape, shifting, watching, the edges blurred, but I knew it wasn't human, not fully. Something had been waiting for us, waiting in the darkness, patient. I wanted to look away. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My eyes were drawn to it. The flickering light outside pulsed again, and for a heartbeat, the reflection seemed almost alive, breathing, moving, smiling. I stepped closer. My shadow merged with the darkness and mirror, and then I realized the reflection wasn't mimicking me. It was doing something different, something deliberate, leaning, stretching, reaching toward me. Not exactly my movements, but close, too close. Lewis whispered something, but I couldn't hear it. My mind narrowed, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed to leave. And then a sound, a laugh, low, hollow, not human, coming from the mirror, from the shadows, from inside the building. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. My own scream caught in my throat. The light outside flickered again, briefly illuminating the lobby in sharp, harsh contrast. And for a moment, I saw it clearly, a figure in the corner, standing, watching, hollow eyes, pale skin twisted, not moving, but somehow alive, waiting, patient. We ran, out of the motel, out to the cruiser. I didn't look back. The light flickered once more before going out, leaving the building silent and dark. But I could feel it, watching, waiting, and I knew it hadn't left. Not really. I drove, not speaking, not breathing much. Every mile, the memory of that flickering light haunted me. The reflection, the shape in the corner, the whispering. I tried to rationalize. Exhausted, stressed. Shadows, my mind playing tricks. But I knew the truth. Something was in that motel. Something patient. Something waiting. Something alive. And I feared if the light ever came back on, it would be for me. Sleep didn't come that night. My mind replayed every moment. The door, the mirror, the shadow in the corner, the flickering light outside, pulsing, alive, beckoning. I could almost see it in my bedroom window. Almost. I didn't dare move. I couldn't. By morning, the motel looked abandoned again. Just a building. Rusted metal, peeling paint, broken windows. But the memory of that light and what I saw in the mirror stayed with me, patient, flickering, and I know I'll return. I don't know why. Some part of me wants to understand, wants to see it again, wants to confront it. But some other part of me knows that the motel doesn't let people leave unchanged, that the light waits for you, watches, judges, and if you stare too long, it takes something. I drove past the motel the next night, 2 a.m., maybe earlier. No light, no flicker, just shadows. But I could feel it, waiting, patient, watching, and I know it always will. I couldn't stay outside the motel. The flickering light had drawn me in, like some horrible compass. The next night, I returned. Fog hung low, wet and suffocating. The sign said vacancy, though the letters were crooked, peeling, like the building itself was smiling at me. The door gave way easily this time. Rusted hinges groaned as I pushed inside. The lobby smelled of decay and damp wood, old dust rising in motes from the cracked floor. Everything was silent except the creaking of the building itself. Settling, breathing. I wanted to leave. Every instinct screamed at me, but I had to know what was inside. I walked down the hall, the wooden floorboards groaning under each step. The room stretched on both sides, doors numbered 1 through 10. The light above the main entrance still flickered, though the bulb was dim from inside. Shadows pooled at the corners of the hallway, stretching impossibly long. I opened the first door. Room 1. Inside, a figure sat upright on the bed. My stomach sank. At first, I thought it was a mannequin, some forgotten decoration left behind. But no, it was me, or a version of me. Every detail. The slouch of the shoulders, the curve of the jaw, the hollow eyes. But the expression was frozen, unnatural. A look of sudden realization. Terror locked in place, staring at the door like it had been expecting someone. I stumbled back. My hands trembled, heart hammering. "This isn't real," I whispered. My voice felt weak, swallowed by the thick air. Room 2. Another me, sitting at the desk, head tilted, frozen mid-gesture, hand raised like it had been reaching for something or someone, eyes wide, staring at the door. Every detail identical. The same clothing, same hair, same subtle imperfections I had long forgotten existed. I began to notice the pattern. Room after room, every guest. Me, sitting or standing or frozen mid-step, all staring at the door, all expecting me. My pulse spiked. My skin crawled. The air felt alive, thick, pressing in from all directions. I tried rationalizing. It was a trick. Old hotel mannequins. Some elaborate prank. My mind filling in gaps. But no, this was wrong. Too precise. Too personal. Every face, every feature, every tiny flaw, I could recognize. Every me was locked in a moment of terror, anticipation, realization. Waiting. Room 5. I hesitated. I knew it was the same. And yet, the door called to me. The light above flickered, as if urging me forward. Inside, a version of me was frozen mid-reach. A hand stretched toward the bedpost, as if gripping some invisible object. Eyes fixed, wide, expectant. The expression wasn't mine exactly. It was mine, warped, older, hollowed, like a reflection through broken glass. The hallway seemed to stretch longer. The doors multiplied. Rooms I hadn't noticed before, numbered strangely. Room 7 loomed at the end, darker, larger somehow. The flickering light above the main entrance pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I reached for the handle. Cold metal, sticky with dust and rust. My hand shook. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and leave. Leave the motel. Leave the town. Leave the memory of the light that drew me in. But I couldn't. I had to see. I had to know what awaited inside Room 7. The door swung open. Silence. Darkness. And then I saw him. Or me. Or something that had been waiting. I froze. The figure sat upright in a chair near the far wall. Not a bed this time. Not lying down. Eyes wide, frozen mid-blink. Staring directly at the door. And the expression, my expression, was wrong. Wrong because it wasn't just anticipation or fear. It was recognition. Recognition of me. Recognition that I was here. That I had come. I stepped closer. Heart hammering. Every creak of the floor sounded like a shout in my ears. The figure's eyes didn't move. And yet I felt its gaze like a weight pressing into my chest. I realized it wasn't just staring at the door. It was staring at me. Through me. Into me. I tried to speak. My voice failed. Whispered words caught in my throat. The room was cold. Unnaturally so. The air thick, heavy. Shadows pooled in the corners, stretching toward me as if alive. The figure in Room 7 didn't move, but it filled the space. It wasn't confined to the chair. Its presence stretched outward, into the room, into the hall, into me. I stumbled back. Every door I had passed now seemed to breathe. The other versions of me were aware. I could feel their frozen eyes following me, still expecting, still waiting. The hallway itself seemed alive, expanding, contracting, twisting in impossible ways. Room 7 called again. I knew I had to look. I forced my eyes back to the figure. Its lips twitched. Not a smile exactly. Not words, but movement, awareness. The stillness was a mask, a prison of moments frozen by something older, deliberate. And then I saw it, a small object in its hand. Something I recognized instantly. My own badge. The one I had left on the cruiser that morning. Somehow it was here, held by a version of me that shouldn't exist. Panic clawed at my chest. My mind raced. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every whisper of movement in the motel seemed amplified. The walls groaned. The air pressed in. The versions of me in the other rooms shifted ever so slightly, not moving in normal ways. Not yet, but alive enough to make me shiver. I realized something terrible. They weren't just frozen. They were waiting for me. And the longer I stared, the more I understood I wasn't the first to find room 7. I wasn't the only one. Somehow, the motel had captured fragments of me, of my fear, my anticipation, my awareness, preserved them in the rooms like a collection of mirrors, each one waiting for the next arrival. I tried to back away. The door closed on its own with a sharp clap. Room 7 swallowed me in darkness. The chair, the figure, the badge, all seemed closer now. Shadows stretched from the corners, crawling along the walls. A low, almost imperceptible whisper echoed in my ears. Not words, not language, just sound, expectation, hunger. I stumbled toward the door. It resisted. The handle wouldn't turn. My breath came fast, shallow, panic rising like a tide. And then I understood. The room didn't want me to leave. Not yet. It wanted acknowledgement, recognition, witnessing. And the figure in the chair, it had been waiting for exactly that. I pressed my face to the edge of the door. The light above the entrance flickered again. Through the crack, I saw shadows moving in impossible ways. The other rooms, the other versions. They shifted, subtly, leaning forward, reaching toward the hallway, expecting, waiting, silent, patient. I couldn't think, couldn't reason. The motel itself seemed alive, breathing, pulsing. And in the center, room 7 held me in its gaze. The figure's eyes, hollowed, wide, aware, were fixed on me. And I realized it knew me, knew everything I feared, everything I tried to hide. And it was patient enough to wait for me to see it fully, completely, before it acted. The door clicked open just enough for me to push through. I ran, hallways stretching impossibly long, doors on both sides opening and closing like lungs. Versions of me shifted as I passed, heads turning, eyes following. Some leaned slightly toward me, some whispered in silence. All waiting, all patient, all me. I burst out of the motel, into the fog, into the cold night. The flickering light above the entrance pulsed one last time and went out. Darkness swallowed the building. Silence pressed in. But I knew what waited inside. I knew the rooms, the figures, the chair in room 7. Waiting, patient, hollow. I drove away, fast, not looking back. The road stretched endlessly, fog curling around the cruiser like fingers. But I could feel it. Room 7, watching, patient, waiting. And I knew in my gut that one day I'd have to return, or it would find me. And when it does, I fear I'll see myself again. Not me, not exactly, but close enough to understand that the motel doesn't just trap people. It traps moments. It traps fear. It traps fragments of us. And it waits, always. I didn't plan to go back to the motel that night. I told myself I wouldn't. The fog had rolled in thick again, sticky and gray, and the memory of room 7 still burned in my chest like a wound I couldn't touch. But something drew me, a pull I couldn't name, a whisper in the back of my mind that said I needed to see it one last time. The cruiser rolled to a stop in front of the lobby. The sign flickered. Vacancy. The bulb above the entrance swung slightly, weak light spilling over cracked concrete, and I noticed it immediately. Movement at the front desk. Someone sitting there. Not a shadow, not a mannequin, a person. I froze. My gut went tight. That person, it was him, or her, or something I couldn't quite place. The clerk, but the face wrong. Timeless. The kind of face that belongs everywhere and nowhere at once. Eyes that had seen too much but not enough. A faint, unreadable smile that made my skin crawl. I stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy, like stepping underwater. Dust hung in the corners. swirling faintly in the yellow light. The clerk didn't move, didn't blink, just watched, patient, expectant. I don't understand, I said, my voice breaking. How, why? The clerk tilted their head, slowly. The motion was too deliberate, too unnatural. And then I noticed a stack of keys on the desk, each one labeled with a date. Dates I recognized. Every night I had come here. Every night I had checked in. And every night I had forgotten. Memories crashed into me like waves. The late night check-ins. Fog outside pressing against the cruiser. The flickering light. The rooms. Room 7. Each time I had handed over my name, given my ID, signed a slip that didn't exist in the records. Every night, the clerk had been there, watching, waiting, recording, checking me in. I stumbled backward. My pulse was loud in my ears. The motel seemed to pulse around me. Walls breathing, shadows stretching longer than possible. You been every night? I whispered. The clerk's lips curved in a faint smile. Not comforting, not human, patient, hollow. I've been waiting, they said, voice soft, almost a whisper, but resonating somewhere inside my skull. For you to notice. I wanted to run. My legs shook, but the lobby had grown. The desk stretched further away, impossibly long, like the building itself had expanded. The keys glinted in the dim light. The air smelled metallic, stale, thick with anticipation. And I realized I wasn't just here for a night. I had been coming here for years. Every night, every visit, every memory, trapped, repeated. A cycle I hadn't understood until now. The clerk gestured toward the desk. Slowly, deliberately. You belong here, they said. You've always belonged here. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. I don't understand. I said again, but the words fell hollow. The truth was too big, too impossible. I knew it in my gut. Every night, every stay, every encounter. The motel had claimed me before I even realized it. And the clerk had been the constant. Watching, recording, waiting. I glanced around. The lobby was different somehow. Shadows coiled at the edges. Shapes forming just beyond vision. Faces in the dust on the floor. Shapes in the corners. Whispers, soft like wind over gravestones. And everywhere, the memory of me, every version of me from the rooms I had seen. Frozen, expectant, waiting for the same realization I was having now. I wanted proof, needed it, but the key in the clerk's hand gleamed impossibly. I recognized my name on it, not the clerk's handwriting. Mine, or mine from another time, another night, another version of me, a fragment preserved in the endless cycle of check-ins. Why? I asked. My voice trembled. Why do you do this? The clerk's eyes never left mine. Because you come, they said. Because you never leave. You always come back. I tried to understand. Tried to rationalize. Years of check-ins, repeated nights, the light, the rooms, room 7. Every piece fit together in a terrible, impossible puzzle. And the image in my mind twisted. The clerk had always been there, always the same, watching me sign slips that disappeared, noting my fears, my hesitations, my terror. Every night, every time. Patient, hollow, waiting. The hallway behind the clerk stretched now, impossibly long. Doors I hadn't noticed before appeared along the walls. I could see shadows moving behind them. Faces, mine. Versions of me. Waiting. Expecting. All eyes on me. All frozen in moments of anticipation. Terror, realization. I felt my stomach turn. Nausea clawed at my throat. My hands shook. Every instinct screamed to leave, to run, to never return. But I couldn't. I had to understand. Had to see what happened next. Had to face the truth. The clerk rose. Slowly. Every movement deliberate. Human enough, but wrong. Not quite right. And then they reached out a hand, holding a key. My key. My name engraved in the brass. I recognized the curve of the letters, though they were older, worn, like the key had existed for decades, waiting for me. You've been checked in, the clerk said, every night, for years, and you never noticed. But now you see. Now you understand. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. My mind reeled. The horror wasn't just in the building. Not just in room 7. Not just in the flickering light. It was here. In me. In every choice, every memory, every step I had taken. The motel had claimed me. Every night. And the clerk had been the constant. Watching. Recording. Waiting. I tried to move, but the floor shifted beneath me. Not physically. Not really. But the sensation was real. The lobby stretched, twisted, shadows pulled. Every door along the hall opened slightly, revealing fragments of me frozen in terror. Every room I had seen before. Room 7, room 5, room 2. All waiting. All watching. All me. The clerk's voice cut through the swirl of panic. You will always check in. You will always belong here. I wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come. The lobby pressed in, thick air filling my lungs. Shadows reached. Faces leaned forward, waiting, patient, hollow, expectant. I realized then, this wasn't just a motel. It was a trap, a record of time, memory, and fear. Every check-in preserved me or fragments of me in the endless cycle. And the clerk had been the keeper, the witness, the patient, hollow sentinel of every night I had returned. Every night I had been claimed. The key gleamed in their hand. My name, my reality. And I understood. I had always been here. Even when I thought I was driving away, leaving, trying to escape. Every night, the motel had drawn me back. Every night, the clerk had welcomed me. Patient, hollow, waiting. I stumbled back toward the door. Tried to escape. Tried to leave the lobby, the building, the night. But the motel wasn't done with me. The shadows thickened. The floor stretched. Every fragment of me in the rooms behind the clerk moved slightly. Not fully. Not yet. But alive enough to make my blood run cold. You cannot leave, the clerk whispered. You're always checked in. And then I saw it. Behind the desk, on the wall, a ledger. Open. Pages filled with names. Dates. Times. Every check-in I had made. Every night I had returned. Every signature, written in my hand, fading into dust. I stumbled out of the lobby, heart hammering, lungs burning. The night pressed against me. Thick fog curling around the cruiser. I drove blindly. Headlights cut through the gray nothingness. But I could feel it. Behind me, waiting, patient, hollow, always watching. I know the motel is still there, waiting. The flickering light. The clerk. Room 7. Every room. Every version of me. And I know, deep down, that one day, I'll have to return. Because it isn't just a motel. It isn't just a building. It isn't just the light. It is time itself, preserved in dust, shadow, and the hollow eyes of clerk who has always been waiting for me. And every night when I close my eyes, I hear it. The soft creak of the door. The shuffle of footsteps. The faint flicker of a light. And I know check-in time is never over. It started at midnight. I wasn't planning to listen, really. I was just tossing around the dial, letting the static hum lull me into half sleep. But then it came through. A voice. Soft, clear, and wrong. Not the kind of voice you hear on a radio, or even on a late-night talk show. This one felt like it was whispering just for me, like it had been waiting. 107.8, it said. That was all, just a number. At first, I laughed. I told myself it was some college kid's experiment, a rogue station broadcasting old songs or conspiracy theories. But then it happened again, and again, every night at exactly midnight. The frequency would flare live, and every time, the voice would be different. Calm, detailed, precise. It told stories, real stories, crimes before the police reported them, before the city even knew they had happened. The first time I realized it wasn't fiction was on a Thursday. I had the radio tuned in, fuzzy static curling around the edges of the voice, when it described a robbery, a small convenience store on Harper Street. The man would wear a green jacket, carry a duffel bag, and threaten the cashier with a knife. I didn't think much of it, just some dark imagination. But the next morning, I walked past Harper Street on my way to work. Police tape. A store still smelling faintly of burnt cigarettes. A green jacket discarded near the alley. The duffel bag never found. I should have stopped listening then. I should have turned the dial and pretended it was never there. But I couldn't. I was drawn to it. The way moths circle a flame, they know will burn them. It was always the same. The voice soft and calm, narrating crimes as though they were everyday news. Not sensationalized, not exciting, just precise. Victim, woman, mid-30s. Location, 24th and Pine. Time, 12:37 a.m. Method. Strangulation. Witness, none. I remember the first time I heard that one. I was in my kitchen, the radio tucked against the counter, coffee cooling in my hands. The words crawled over me like cold fingers, leaving a residue I couldn't wash off. I want to tell someone, anyone. But how do you explain a voice that knows the future? People would call you insane. And maybe the voice was just my mind unraveling in real time. I started keeping a notebook. Dates, times, details, everything the frequency said. I began to notice patterns. Small threads weaving through the chaos. A time window, a location. Sometimes there was a pause, a gap where nothing happened. And then, like clockwork, the crime unfolded exactly as predicted. I stopped sleeping normally. Nights became waiting rooms for the broadcast. I'd sit in my chair, knees pulled to my chest, radio crackling, waiting for first faint hum of 107.8. And every night, when it came alive, it was like listening to the city breathe its darkest secrets. One night, it was different. I had my headphones on. The world reduced to static and whispers when the voice spoke directly to me, not narrating someone else's crime, not describing a scene somewhere in the city. It described my apartment, my living room, the exact position of the chair I was sitting in. "You are listening," it said. I froze. My heart hammered in my chest. I told myself it was a trick of sound. The way voices can echo and feel close when you're alone. But then it continued. You keep a notebook. You write. You observe. You are awake when the world sleeps. Do you understand? I couldn't speak. My hands shook. My notebook trembled on the table. I felt like the walls had leaned in, like my ceiling was lower than it should be, pressing down on me. The voice paused, long enough for me to think maybe I imagined it. "You are safe for now, but not for long." I ripped the headphones off. The radio went silent, static crackling in the empty room, like it had been holding its breath. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I just sat there, listening to the silence. My skin crawled with the feeling of being watched. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay in bed, eyes wide, imagining the voice creeping through the walls, the floorboards, maybe even inside my head. And in the early hours, just before dawn, I heard it again. My name this time. Whispered, low, not over the radio, over the air itself, or maybe through the static in my mind. I started seeing things during the day. Small things at first. Shadows that didn't belong. Reflections in windows that moved differently from me. Shapes at the edge of my vision. And every time, the radio would hum to life at midnight. And the crimes it described were closer. Closer to me. A man would stagger into the subway with a knife. A woman would disappear from a bus stop. And I would recognize him before the world did. The voice wasn't just predicting anymore. It was pointing, guiding. I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't stop. The frequency had become a part of my life, like breathing or blinking. I tried to leave the city once. Thinking distance might save me. I drove hours away, radio off, windows up, the sun like a shield. But at midnight, even in the empty countryside, I heard it. Faint crackling, unavoidable. The voice had found me. It told me about a car accident that would happen back in my apartment building. Exact details. Time, vehicles, the pattern of broken glass. And when I returned, it had happened. I couldn't escape it. It wasn't just a station. It was something alive, something aware, something that watched. I began to notice the little things in the crimes it described, patterns in the perpetrator's choices, the rhythms of the city's chaos. And then one night, I heard something I couldn't reconcile, my own future. Midnight, you will be alone. You will be listening, and you will know fear like you have never known. I laughed then, but it was hollow, a sound with no weight, because I already did know that fear. I had been living in it, every night, every word, every pause and static. The frequency had become the pulse of my world, and I was trapped inside it. Some nights, I lie awake after it stops, wondering if it's just waiting for the right moment. Some nights, I swear I hear footsteps in the apartment, or a chair scrape across the floor where no one sits. And every night, when the city sleeps, 107.8 comes alive, narrating the crimes before anyone else can, before the world knows. I've tried to ignore it, to turn the dial, to tell myself I'm losing my mind. But it finds me, always, and I think it knows me now. Knows how I move, knows my thoughts, knows that I can't stop listening. Last night, it described a crime I can't bear to write down. Not because it's unbelievable, but because it's so close. Too close. The details were intimate, personal, impossible for anyone else to know. And yet, it spoke them as if reading a page from my own life. I don't know how much longer I can do this. How long I can sit here, waiting for midnight. Headphones on, notebook in lap, heart hammering. The frequency doesn't just tell the crimes anymore. It toys with them, plays with them, and maybe one day, it will turn toward me. If you hear 107.8 on your radio, don't listen. Turn it off. Walk away. It isn't just a station. It's a presence. A voice that knows too much. A voice that watches. And when it finds you, it won't just narrate the world. It will narrate you. I keep listening anyway. I can't stop, because if I do, I might disappear. And then there will be no one left to hear what comes next. I thought I had reached the limits of fear. I thought the voice on 107.8 had exhausted its reach. But I was wrong. It was a Tuesday night, cold and humid. The kind of weather that seeps under your skin and makes your bones ache. I was sitting in my usual spot, headphones pressed tight against my ears, notebook open. Midnight approached like a slow-moving train, each tick of the clock pounding in my chest. I had learned to recognize the signs. The first subtle static, the faint hum that grew louder until the voice emerged from the radio's belly. And then it began. At first, it was like any other night. The soft, almost clinical tone, describing someone else's crime somewhere in the city. A robbery here, a disappearance there. But then the details shifted. The coordinates, the locations, they match mine. My street, my building, my apartment number. I laughed to myself at first. A trick, some kind of prank. But then it started describing me. Not just me in the abstract sense. My actions, my exact movements. The way I leaned forward in my chair. The position of my notebook on my lap. The faint tremble of my hand as I tried to hold the pen still. You will leave your apartment at 12:15. The voice said. I froze. My pulse hammered so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. I hadn't told anyone about my nights with 107.8. No one knew. No one could know. The air in the room thickened, heavy with dread. You will walk the patrol car. Your keys will jingle. The engine will roar to life. You will not look back. I gripped the notebook. My hands shook so violently I could barely write down the words. The words themselves were like knives, cutting the fragile barrier reality I had clung to. I tried to tell myself it was impossible. It couldn't predict me. It couldn't know my life in such intimate detail. But the voice didn't stop. It narrated my night, step by step, as though it had already happened. The street lights will flicker. The air will taste the rain. You will notice the man leaning against a lamppost. He will not move as you approach. His eyes will follow you. You will feel unease, but not turn away. I couldn't breathe. Every word was a countdown. Every phrase a step I was already taking, whether I wanted to or not. The voice knew my routines. It knew the city I had walked 1,000 times, the patrol route I had memorized, and it described them as though I were no longer alive, merely an actor following a script written by someone else. I should have turned it off. I should have thrown the radio across the room, smashed it to pieces, destroyed every trace of the voice that had consumed my nights. But I couldn't. It was as if the frequency had wrapped its tendrils around my mind, as if it knew I would listen. You will reach the corner of 5th and Monroe. A woman will scream. Her purse will be stolen. You will chase the thief. He will disappear into the shadows. You will not catch him. I remember that corner. I pass it every night on my way back from patrol, always noticing the flicker of the streetlights, the way shadows pooled in the corners of the sidewalks. And now, as the voice spoke, I realized that what it described wasn't just the city. It was my life, the rhythm of my nights, the fragile illusion that I control my own movements. I couldn't stop the tremors in my hands. The notebook shook beneath my pen. I wanted to run, to hide, to do anything that might disrupt the script, but I felt paralyzed, bound by the inevitability of the words. You will see the alley on your left. Do not enter. You will hear footsteps behind you. Heavy, slow. Do not turn. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and shallow, like I was drowning in the dark. The voice continued, narrating each movement I would make, each sound I would hear, each heartbeat I would feel. You will glance at the patrol radio. It will be silent. You will feel the weight of anticipation. You will understand fear, true fear, for the first time. I dropped the notebook. My pen clattered to the floor. I wanted to scream, to break the radio, to tear apart and silence the voice forever. But I didn't. I couldn't. My body moved against my will, as though the voice had seized control. I checked my watch. 12 o'clock. 15 minutes until the events began. 15 minutes until the prediction became reality. I tried to think rationally. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe I had subconsciously memorized my patrol route and imagined the details. But no, it was impossible. The voice described things I couldn't possibly know. The exact position of my keys and tray, the faint scuff on the floorboards near my door, the pattern of shadows cast by the streetlights outside. The room grew colder. The air seemed heavier, pressing down on my chest, making each breath a labor. I wanted to leave, to run, to escape, but my legs refused to move. I was trapped, a spectator of my own life, watching as a voice orchestrated my actions. You will step outside. The wind will be sharp against your face. You will hear the distant wail of sirens. You will think you are alone, but you are being watched. I wanted to argue with it, to refuse, but I knew better. The prediction would happen. It always did. The frequency never lied. I left my apartment. The cold bit into my skin, the wind tangling my hair, the city around me alive and indifferent. Everything was as the voice had said. The streetlights flickered. The corner of 5th and Monroe approached, and there she was, exactly as predicted, a woman struggling, screaming, a man snatching her purse. I chased him, just as the voice had said. He disappeared into the shadows, leaving me panting on the empty street. My chest burned, my hands ached, and I realized something terrifying. I was not in control. I had been following a script written for me, narrated by a voice that knew too much. You will hear the footsteps behind you now. The voice said. I spun hard in my throat. There was nothing, just the quiet city, empty streets, the distant hum of traffic, and then the footsteps again, faint but deliberate, keeping pace with me. I knew I hadn't imagined them. The voice had predicted them. It had planned this. I ran, my patrol route twisting and turning exactly as the prediction had described. Every shadow, every alley, every flicker of light matched the narration. The fear that had been simmering in my chest now roared like a living thing. I understood then that the voice didn't just predict, it manipulated. It guided the world, bending it toward its own design. By the time I returned to my apartment, drenched in sweat and rain, the prediction was complete. Every detail had come true. Every movement, every sound, every heartbeat. And yet I was alive. For now. I sat back in my chair, shaking, the radio silent again, the night swallowing the city in darkness. My notebook lay on the floor, pages damp with my trembling hands. And I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The voice had crossed the threshold. It no longer narrated distant crimes. It narrated me, my life, my fear, my inevitable surrender. I thought I could cope with the other stories, the crimes of strangers, the tragedies that passed by unnoticed. But this was different. This was intimate, personal. It was a glimpse into a future I couldn't avoid, a future I couldn't control. And when I closed my eyes, I saw the voice waiting, not in the radio, not in the static, but in the spaces between, in the alleys and the shadows, in the quiet moments before midnight. It was there, always there, narrating what would come next, shaping the inevitable, watching me crumble under the weight of its words. I don't know how long I can endure it. I don't know how many nights I can survive listening to my own life being read aloud. But I know this. 107.8 isn't just a frequency. It's a force. It's a presence. And it will not be denied. I keep listening anyway, because if I don't, I won't know what is planned. And I fear that when I stop, it will come for me, not as a voice, but as the darkness itself, pulling me into the story it has already written. It was a Thursday night when the frequency changed. Not the content, never the content, but the urgency. It wasn't just narrating anymore, it was guiding. The voice no longer spoke of crimes in the city. It whispered directions, precise and unnerving, like a map written in static. You will come to 5th Street, it said. I hesitated. My hands hovered over the notebook. I had learned the pattern of these messages. The rhythm of 107.8. Every night, it delivered the city's secrets. Every night, I wrote them down. But this time, it was personal. It wanted me somewhere. You will enter the house, the voice continued. I lived on the edge of disbelief and fear, but I had followed the frequency this far. I told myself it was curiosity or obsession or something I could no longer control. I didn't drive the narrative anymore. It drove me. I found the house on 5th as the voice had described. I recognized it immediately. Abandoned decades ago, boarded windows and peeling paint. A carcass of a home where life had long since left. Even from the street, the air around it felt heavier, thick with mildew and decay. The gate creaked as I pushed it open. I almost turned back. Almost. But the voice hummed in my mind, steady and coaxing. You are here. Step inside. The door resisted, swollen from dampness, but it gave way under my hand. Inside, the air was stale, tasting of rot and dust. I took a careful step. The floorboards groaned beneath me, each sound echoing unnaturally in the empty space. And then I heard it, the whispering. I froze. Hundreds of radios scattered across the floors, piled on furniture, stacked on shelves, all crackling softly, not random static, not music or chatter. Whispering, the same frequency, 107.8. Every voice blending, layering, echoing in unison. They spoke in patterns I could barely follow, fragmented crimes, names, times, predictions. And at the center, clearer than all the others, was the voice I had come to know, guiding me. I staggered forward, the weight of it pressing on my chest, making each breath a battle. The whispers weren't just noise, they were alive. They coiled around me, crawling under my skin, twisting my thoughts, pulling me deeper into the house. You will sit, you will listen, you will understand, it said. I obeyed. I couldn't do anything else. My notebook lay on my lap as I scribbled frantic notes, trying to capture every detail, every whisper. And the more I wrote, the more the whispers shifted, reacting to me like the house itself was aware of my presence. The radios began to change. One by one, they tuned themselves. Frequencies shifted, voices overlapping. I realized then that I wasn't just hearing 107.8 anymore. I was inside it, inside the broadcast itself. Every whisper felt like it was moving through me, and I couldn't distinguish my thoughts from its words. You are the observer, the voice said, but you are becoming part of the story. I stumbled backward, knocking over a pile of radios. They clattered to the floor, yet their whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder, more insistent, circling me in a dissonant symphony. My head ached. My ears rang. I wanted to scream, to run, to escape, but my legs refused to move. It was like walking through molasses made of static and fear. I remembered something from the first nights. I had heard 107.8. The crimes, the disappearances, the predictions. They were always distant, detached. But here, in this house, the distance vanished. I felt the crimes as they happened. Every scream, every whisper, every shadow of violence. They weren't just reports anymore. They were imprinted in the walls, in the air, in me. I wandered deeper into the house, drawn by the frequency. The whispers led me to a back room, where the floor was littered with radios, their screens cracked, their speakers twisted. One stood on a table, larger than the rest, glowing faintly. The voice emanated from it, stronger than anywhere else. Clear, direct, personal. "You have come," it said. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, my lungs on fire. The room seemed to pulse with the sound, vibrating through the floor, through the walls, through me. I realized I wasn't alone, not in the literal sense. Something was watching, something that moved in the spaces between the whispers. "You will understand soon," it said. I pressed closer to the table, drawn by the impossible pull of the frequency. And then I saw them, names written on sheets of paper, scattered around the radios. Dates, times, locations, crimes, patterns. And at the bottom of one sheet, my name. I recoiled, the notebook falling to my lap. My pulse thundered in my ears. "You are part of the pattern," the voice said. "You were always part of it." I wanted to run, but I knew the house wouldn't let me. It wasn't about doors or locks. It was about inevitability. The whispers wove themselves into my mind, binding me, reminding me that I was never in control. The frequency had always been more than a broadcast. It was a presence, a living archive of the city's darkest moments. And now it had claimed me. I stumbled to the window. Broken panes reflected the radio stack behind me, the flickering light painting shadows across the walls. And in that reflection, I saw something impossible. Dozens of versions of myself, all scribbling in notebooks, all listening, all trapped in the same loop. Each reflection whispered the same words, the same warnings. Each one was me, but not. "You see yourself," the voice said, "but only because you're becoming what you observe." I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, the static pressing into my ears like water. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, until it was no longer distinguishable from thought. I couldn't think without hearing it, couldn't breathe without tasting it, couldn't move without feeling its guidance. The house wasn't just a building. It wasn't just a location. It was a node, a hub, a living extension of 107.8. And I was inside it, already part of it, already becoming one of the whispers. I tried to resist, tried to focus on the notebook, tried to anchor myself in something real. But the house had already marked me. Every radio, every whisper, every crackle of static reinforced it. I was no longer an observer. I was a participant, a conduit. The night stretched on, timeless and heavy. The voice continued, detailing crimes, narrating events, layering reality over itself until I couldn't tell where I ended and the broadcast began. I realized then that I might never leave, that I might be trapped here in this abandoned house, in the center of a storm of static for the rest of my life. And yet, even in the terror, I couldn't stop listening. The pull of 107.8 was too strong, the whispers too seductive, the fear too intoxicating. I was theirs now, part of the frequency, part of the story. I scribbled in my notebook, hands shaking, head pounding, knowing that every word I wrote, every detail I recorded, only deepened the bond. The house had revealed itself as more than a place. It was a shrine, a trap, a mirror, and in it, I saw the truth. There was no escape. There was only listening, only following, only becoming. I don't know how long I sat there, surrounded by whispering radios, the voice guiding me, shaping me. Time lost meaning. The city outside continued without me, oblivious. And inside, the house on Fifth became my world, my prison, my confession. I am here because 107.8 wanted me here. And now I am part of it. I keep listening anyway. I have no choice. I thought the house on Fifth had broken me. I thought the whispers, the static, the radios, had consumed all that I was and left nothing behind. But I was wrong. The next night, I returned to my patrol car, the city quiet and damp with the promise of rain. The frequency wasn't just a voice anymore. It had become a presence, a pulse under my skin. I tried to drive, to escape, to convince myself that leaving the house behind would silence it. But the moment I turned the key, it was there. Static, low, humming, insistent. It filled the cabin, vibrating through the dashboard, crawling along the upholstery, curling into my ears. I thought it was the radios from the house, some impossible echo following me. I grabbed the hammer I had stashed in the back seat, the one I had carried like a talisman, and smashed the radio on the passenger seat. Shards flew, sparks danced, and for a heartbeat, silence. And then it started again, inside the car. From nowhere, from everywhere, the frequency had moved. It wasn't just broadcasting, it was inhabiting, seeping into the metal, the plastic, the very air around me. I hit the dashboard, the stereo, even the vents. The hammer shook in my hands. Nothing worked. It didn't matter what I destroyed. The sound, the voice, the whispering of 107.8 came from inside me now, in my ears, my head, in the blood pulsing through my temples. It wasn't words at first, just noise, pure, high-pitched, insidious static. Then the voice, calm, precise. The same narration I had grown to fear, now impossible to ignore. You cannot escape, it said. I slammed my hands over my ears. My breath came in short, ragged bursts. The streets outside the windshield blurred, fog with a sheen of wet asphalt and neon reflections. But the voice didn't stop. The voice never stopped. You thought the house was the end. You were wrong. The signal is everywhere. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. My reflection in the rearview mirror was pale, eyes wide, staring back at me like someone else entirely. The car seemed alive, vibrating with the static. I felt it in the seat beneath me, in the pedals under my feet, in the steering column twisting beneath my hands. I wanted to drive. I wanted to get far away. But the voice narrated every movement before I made it, like it had already mapped my escape. You will turn left at the next intersection. The light will be red. You will wait. Someone is watching. You cannot see them yet. I obeyed. I don't know why. I couldn't stop. My mind had surrendered. I could only follow the instructions, each one etched into the static, each one dragging me deeper into the voice's control. And then I saw him, or it, something standing under the flickering street lamp. The outline of a figure blurred by rain, too still to be human. The voice didn't describe him, but I knew it was part of the broadcast, part of the presence that had invaded my car, my life. You will feel fear now, real fear. You will know what it is to be completely watched. I did. Every nerve in my body screamed. My heartbeat thundered, each pulse a drumbeat against the walls of my skull. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink, but I could feel its awareness, like a shadow pressing through glass, the wet night air into my chest. I thought about leaving the city again, about driving hours, escaping everything, but the voice anticipated it. Every turn I took, every street I entered, every lane change, it narrated in real time. I could almost see it forming the words on invisible pages, a script I was forced to follow. You are becoming part of it, it said. You are the observer, the participant, the conduit. You will understand the story soon. I didn't understand. Not really. I just knew I had to keep moving, had to keep listening, had to keep obeying. And through the static, the whispering, I started hearing fragments. Names, dates, crimes. But this time closer. Personal. So close it felt like they were happening inside the car. Every crash, every scream, every sound I'd ever heard on 107.8, magnified, sharpened, placed inside the vehicle. I slammed the brakes. Tires screamed against wet asphalt. My hand shook on the wheel, and in the reflection of the rear-view mirror, I saw dozens of shapes, blurry and shifting, pressing close to the glass, circling, whispering. You will not escape, the voice said. You will become part of the static. You will listen. You will know. I drove anyway. I had to. There was no other choice. The city blurred past, rain streaking the windshield, streetlights pulsing, but the voice was inside me, around me, in me. The static had a weight now, a presence, as though it was pressing on my skin, seeping into my lungs, into my ears, into my head. And then I realized something worse. It wasn't just in the car. It was in me, I could feel it in my bones, in the marrow of my hands, in the sweat on my back. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was part of my nervous system. Every twitch, every heartbeat, every thought threaded with static, with whispers, with the voice. It knew my fears, my routines, my weaknesses. It was inside me, shaping me, guiding me, making me part of its story. I pulled over at the side of the road, rain soaking through my jacket, hair plastered to my head. The voice didn't pause. It didn't need me to move to speak. It spoke regardless of doors or windows, radio speakers or destroyed electronics. It had become omnipresent. A living pulse in the night, narrating, shaping, claiming. You are listening, it said, and you will not stop. Not now. Not ever. I tried to scream. My own voice joined the static, a broken note in the dissonance. My hands clutched my head, trying to block it out, but the voice laughed, not in sound, not in words, but in the vibration against my skull and the pressure in my chest, and the inevitability of its presence. You cannot break what already exists. You cannot destroy what is inside you. You are part of the story now. I could feel it. I could feel the connection to House on Fifth, to the radios, to the frequencies humming through the city. The static wasn't just a sound. It was a web, and I was at the center. Every thought I had, every fear, every heartbeat, was now an echo of 107.8. The rain continued to fall, the city around me unaware, indifferent. The car sat idle, alive with static, alive with whispers. And I understood, finally, the full weight of what had happened. I was no longer an observer. I was no longer a listener. I was a vessel, a conduit, a node, part of the network the frequency had created. A living repository of sound, fear, and inevitability. I wanted to leave. I wanted to drive until the city vanished, until the horizon swallowed me. But I knew better. The voice had already predicted it, already narrated it. I could not escape the script it had written. I could not escape what I had become. And so I sat, rain dripping from the roof, static vibrating through the seat, 107.8 whispering in my ears, my thoughts, my bones. I scribbled in my notebook, shaking, exhausted, knowing that every word I wrote only strengthened the bond. The frequency was not just a broadcast. It was alive. It was aware. It was inside me now. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I listened. I wrote. I obeyed. And as the city went on, oblivious, I understood the truth I could no longer deny. The static would never stop. The voice would never stop. And I would never stop listening, because it was inside me, and it had no intention of leaving. I walked my old route that night. The same streets I patrolled for years. The same corners where I had seen the city's violence unfold over and over again. It was quiet, quieter than usual. The kind of quiet that presses against your chest and makes every footstep sound like a warning. I told myself it was just the hour that the city slept, but the memories didn't sleep. Every streetlight flickered, like it remembered something. Every alley smelled of rain and decay, even though the air was dry. I thought about the first night I walked this route, 20 years ago, eager and unaware, uniform crisp, boots polished. I thought about how quickly that eagerness had been replaced by weariness, by a sense of inevitable failure. I remembered the first body I had seen on my beat, a man lying on the sidewalk, eyes wide and staring at nothing, blood pooling around him. I remembered the way I had stepped closer, half hoping it was some mistake, some misunderstanding, and the way my stomach had twisted when I realized it wasn't. That was the night I understood that fear had no schedule, that it didn't knock or wait. It just arrived uninvited. Tonight, walking these streets, I could feel it again. The fear, the weight, the hollow knot of dread that had followed me for decades. I had survived more than I thought I could. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the city felt like it remembered me, like it was waiting for me to finish something I had started long ago. I passed the corner of 5th and Monroe. The streetlight was crooked now, swinging slightly in the wind, casting jagged shadows across the pavement. I remember the woman who had screamed here years ago, the thief disappearing into shadows, the helplessness that had settled over me like a second skin. I had chased him, of course, always chased, and I had never caught him. I shook my head, trying to shed the memories, but the city had a way of dragging them back, of making them tangible again. The alleyways whispered their histories in the wind, the broken glass underfoot crunching like the remnants of old crimes. I thought about the men I had arrested, the women I had tried to protect, the children I had failed. All of them left traces, like footprints in the dirt, marking my path with guilt and regret. I reached the old diner on Pine Street, closed now, shuttered windows and faded signs. I remembered the night a man had pulled a knife there, the way I had moved, trying to save the waitress and myself at the same time. I remembered the sound of my own voice, shouting, the metallic clatter of the knife hitting the counter, and I remembered the silence afterward, heavier than any scream. I walked on. The streets were lined with memories, and each one pressed against me with the weight of years. I thought about the men I had lost, partners, friends, shadows of myself who had vanished into the city's darkness. I thought about the families I had tried to save, the lives I had failed, the ones that slipped through my hands no matter how fast I ran. It was a long route, this one, longer than I remembered. The blocks stretched like they were breathing, expanding and contracting with each step I took. I thought about the nights I had driven the cruiser through these streets, lights flashing, sirens screaming, heart hammering, adrenaline coursing through my veins. It had been a different kind of fear then. Immediate, urgent, physical. Now it was different. It was older, deeper. It was a fear of looking back and realizing the city had changed. But I hadn't. I remembered the old house on 5th Street, the one I had passed 1,000 times, boarded up, dark, a monument to neglect. I remembered the rumors, the stories of people disappearing, of shadows moving where no one should be. I never believed them then. I do now, walking past it tonight. I felt the memory of every scream, every echo, every shadow pressing against me like a hand on my shoulder. The rain started as I reached the bridge. Faint at first, missing the streetlights and slicking the pavement. I liked the rain. It washed the streets, washed the sins off the asphalt. Even if only for a moment. I slowed, letting it soak into my coat, cold and damp against my skin, a reminder that I was still alive, still moving. I thought about the years I had spent walking this route, patrolling, observing, surviving, the violence, the loss, the constant hum of fear and chaos. I had carried it all, tucked away under a mask of professionalism and duty. And now, walking alone in the quiet night, I felt it rise to the surface. Every mistake, every failure, every moment I hadn't been enough. I reached the old park on Maple Avenue. The swing swayed slightly in the wind, their chains squeaking like whispers. I remember the night a child had run into traffic here, a car skidding, horns blaring, and the way I had screamed, dove, caught him just in time, and the way the mother had collapsed into tears. And I had felt relief and shame at the same time, knowing relief was fleeting. I walked on, each step a rhythm of memory and pain. The city was alive, but empty. The buildings loomed like silent witnesses. I remembered faces, some familiar, some fleeting, etched into my mind with the permanence of trauma. I remembered blood on the streets, the smell of fear and rain, and exhaust mixing into something almost tangible. I reached the end of the route, the point where the streets turned and the city's lights faded into darkness. I paused, taking it all in. The years of patrol, the streets, the alleys, the violence, the loss, the lives I tried to save, and those I couldn't. I felt the weight of it pressing down, a physical presence in my chest. I thought about one more night, one last walk, one last patrol, one last chance to face it all. I didn't know if it would bring closure or just another memory to haunt me, but I kept walking anyway, boots crunching on wet asphalt, rain soaking through, heart hammering with the rhythm of years of fear and survival. The city didn't forgive. It didn't forget, but I had to move forward. Even if forward was just putting one foot in front of the other, even if every step was heavy with the ghosts of the past. I walked past the familiar streetlights, the cracked sidewalks, the darkened windows, feeling the years press against me, knowing they would never release their grip. I passed the bridge again, letting the rain wash over me. The water ran in rivulets across the asphalt, carrying the city's memories into the drains, but not mine. Mine were mine to carry. Every scream, Every shout, every silence, every shadow. They were part of me now, woven into the rhythm of my steps. I thought about the years ahead, the nights I would walk alone, the streets I would patrol, the memories that would never fade. And I realized that one more night wasn't just about the city. It was about me, facing what I had become, facing the weight of every crime, every loss, every shadow I had walked past and couldn't save. The rain eased, the streets glimmered in the faint light of distant lamps, and I took one last look down the route I had walked for decades. The city was alive, indifferent, unchanging, and I was part of its history, part of its dark pulse. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the night settle around me, and I kept moving, one foot in front of the other, carrying every memory, every fear, every loss with me into the quiet dawn. One more night, that's all it had to be, and maybe, just maybe it would be enough. I had thought that walking the streets one more time would prepare me. I had thought the years of patrol, the endless nights, the sights and smells of violence, had made me immune to the ghosts of the past. I was wrong. It started the moment the first call came through. The radio crackled in the cruiser, a mundane thing I had grown used to. The dispatcher's voice clipped and urgent, but tonight it felt different. The call didn't just sound routine. It sounded familiar. A woman screaming, a child lost, a man bleeding in the alleyway. Every detail, every tone, every pattern of urgency mirrored a night I had tried to forget. I gripped the wheel tighter, feeling the leather cut into my palms, knuckles white. I remember that night, years ago, a fire, a robbery gone wrong, screams that still echoed in my dreams, the same intersection, the same alley, the same twisted sense of helplessness. I had chased shadows then, just as I chase shadows now, trying to make up for what I couldn't undo. I arrived at the scene, heart hammering, and the familiarity was suffocating. The layout, the buildings, the broken streetlight. It was like I had stepped into a memory, only the details were sharper, crueler, as though someone had painted the scene with intention. The woman on the corner reminded me of another woman, someone I had failed to save, her eyes wide, face pale, trembling. I called out, shouted reassurances I wasn't sure I believed, and the radio kept crackling, every static-filled pause echoing the calls from years ago. I moved to check the alley, flashlights sweeping across wet brick and garbage cans. The man lying there, his injuries were new, but the pain was something I had felt before. I had seen it too many times to ignore, and the screams, distant but piercing, carved into my memory, pulling up moments I had buried deep. Every call I responded to that night reflected a tragedy I had never resolved. Every crime, every accident, every desperate plea mirrored something from my past, like the city itself was forcing me to relive it. I couldn't run. I couldn't ignore it. The streets were lined with echoes, and I was walking straight through them. I thought about the child I had lost once, years ago, wandering into traffic while I was chasing a suspect I never caught. I remember the sound of tires screeching, the mother's scream, the way my own hands had trembled as I tried to reach him. That night, I had promised myself I would never forget, but I had tried to, over and over. And now, every corner I turned, every call I answered, brought it back in sharp, unrelenting focus. At the next scene, a burglary in progress, I recognized the layout immediately. The living room, the scattered furniture, the broken glass. And I remembered another night, another burglary, years ago, where I had arrived too late. The image of the family huddled together, terrified, haunted me still. The current scene was different, but the echoes of the past pressed against me like hands on my shoulders. I tried to focus on the present, to block out the ghosts, but it was impossible. They were everywhere. Each call, each victim, each scene reflected a memory I couldn't escape. Faces blurred together, screams overlapping, cries merging into a chorus of guilt and failure. A man collapsed in the park, a knife wound in his side, and I saw the face of a stranger from another night. Another attack I had failed to prevent. The similarity was eerie, almost supernatural. I treated the wound, called for backup, but all the while, the image of that old failure hovered in my mind. The radio kept crackling with updates, every report echoing details from past tragedies, rearranged just enough to feel new. yet unbearably familiar. I drove to another call, my hands gripping the wheels so tightly I thought they might break. The street was wet with rain, reflections of neon signs and broken lamps painting the asphalt in jagged patterns. And in every reflection, I saw faces I'd failed, eyes wide with fear, mouths open in silent screams. The dispatcher's voice was just a blur now, static and fragments of information overlapping with memories. A robbery, a car accident, a missing child. It all merged into one long, continuous line of loss and failure. Each scene mirrored another, like I was trapped in a cycle I had no power to escape. I pulled up to a house on the edge of the neighborhood. A man had been shot. The layout, the smell of smoke and blood, the way the curtains hung. Everything was familiar. I knelt beside him, checking for a pulse, and my mind involuntarily replayed another night, another man, another shot, another failure. My fingers shook as I applied pressure to the wound. The static from a radio seemed louder, vibrating to the car, through the walls, through me. "You're too late," I whispered to myself. But the words weren't my own. They came from a radio, from the city, from the memories that haunted me. And I realized then that the night was orchestrated to confront me, to make me face everything I had tried to forget. The calls kept coming. Each one a mirror, each one a reminder. A fire at the old factory brought back the blaze I had once failed to control. A stabbing in the subway echoed another night when I had arrived too late. Each scene forced me to confront the truth I had buried under years of service and denial. I was a witness to history repeating itself, and I was powerless to intervene. I stopped at a convenience store where a man was brandishing a knife. The layout, the cashier's terrified expression, the glint of the blade. It was another night I had never forgotten. I remember my own voice shouting orders, my own hands trembling as I reached for my weapon. And now, decades later, I was reliving it, the past bleeding into the present with cruel precision. I realized the city was alive with memory. Every building, every alley, every streetlight seemed to remember the tragedies, the failures, the losses, and somehow it was making me relive them, forcing me to face what I had long tried to bury. I felt like I was moving through a city of ghosts, each face a reflection of my own inadequacies, each scream a mirror of my failures. The rain started again as I drove to the next call. Streets glistened under the streetlights, reflections rippling in puddles. And in each puddle, I saw faces in the past. Children, partners, victims, all watching me, accusing, pleading, reminding me of what I could never fix. I thought about quitting, about leaving the force, leaving the streets, leaving the memories behind. But even then, I knew it was impossible. The city had claimed me. The tragedies, the faces, the echoes, they were part of me now. I couldn't run from them. I couldn't ignore them. I could only move forward, one call at a time, one step at a time, haunted by the familiar faces that never left. By the time the night ended, I had seen every street, every corner, every alley, every victim, and each one had mirrored a past tragedy I had never resolved. The weight of it pressed against me, heavy and unrelenting. I parked the cruiser at the station, drenched in rain and exhaustion, feeling the hollow ache of years of failure settle into my bones. I sat there for a long time, listening to the radio, waiting for the static, the echoes, the familiar voices that had guided me through the night. And I realized that no matter how many nights I patrolled, how many calls I answered, the familiar faces would always be there, waiting, watching, reminding me of everything I had failed to prevent. The city was alive, and it remembered. I remembered, and I knew that one night, one more night, would not be enough. I turned off the radio, trying to silence the echoes, trying to escape the familiar faces that haunted every corner of my mind. But even in the quiet, I felt them, watching, waiting, and I knew I would see them again. I didn't know how many more nights I could face them, how many more calls I could answer without breaking. But I knew this. The familiar faces would never leave, and neither would the fear. I started the engine, the hum of the cruiser filling the silence, and I drove into the night, into the city that remembered everything, into the memories that refused to fade. One more call, one more street, one more night. That's all it had to be. And maybe, just maybe, I could survive it. The night started like any other. The streets were empty, the air sharp with the smell of rain-soaked asphalt and exhaust. My boots tapped against the pavement, a rhythm I had known for decades. Each step echoing the countless nights I had walked this route. My cruiser sat waiting at the corner, lights off, engine silent, as if it knew I would return. I climbed inside and slumped into the seat, letting the hum of the city settle over me. For a moment, I thought maybe tonight would be quiet. Maybe the ghost would leave me alone for a few hours. But the moment I reached for the radio, the air shifted. Static, low, buzzing, insistent. My hands froze. I had heard it 1,000 times before, but tonight it felt different, like it was waiting for me. And then the voice came. "Welcome back, officer." I jumped, gripping the wheel. My heart pounded in my ears, loud enough to drown out the city itself. The voice was calm, almost casual, like it had been expecting me. And then I realized I had heard that exact phrase before. I had responded to it countless times. Every time I climbed into this car at the start of shift, every time I turned the key, every time I settled into the seat, the same words had greeted me. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. What is this?" I muttered, but the voice didn't answer. It never did. It just continued, weaving its way through the static. The calls started immediately. The same calls I had responded to for decades. A woman screaming in an alley. A man stumbling out of a building, clutching his side. A child lost in the park. Every detail, every layout, every heartbeat mirrored memories I had tried to bury. I had lived these moments before hundreds of times, and yet they felt new and terrifyingly immediate. I drove toward the first call, hands trembling, knuckles white on the wheel. The city outside blurred in the rain, but every streetlight, every shadow, every familiar corner pressed against me like it knew me. And in my mind, I began to see it all. The years of reliving the same night, the countless shifts, the failures, the things I couldn't fix. It wasn't just memory anymore. It was reality folding over itself, looping, trapping me in a pattern I couldn't escape. The first scene was identical to one I had responded to years ago. Decades ago, a woman screamed as a man shoved a child behind a dumpster. The details were precise. Every shout, every movement, every shadow of fear was exactly as I remembered it. I could not intervene differently. I could not save anyone. I was a passenger in my own life, my actions narrated by some unseen hand, my choices predetermined. I moved to the next call. A man slumped against a brick wall, blood seeping through his fingers, eyes wide in terror. I knelt beside him, checking for a pulse, and my mind flashed back to another night, another man, another wound I had failed to stop from becoming fatal. I pressed harder, my hand shaking, but the outcome felt inevitable, just as it had been before. The dispatcher's voice, the radio static, the distant hum of the city, all of it overlapped with memories, blending present and past into one long, unbroken line of repetition. I realized then that I had been here before, countless times. Every call, every shift, every night. And every time I had failed to change anything. I drove through familiar streets, watching the neon reflections ripple in puddles, seeing faces in windows that weren't there, hearing cries that didn't exist, and yet they were real. To me, they were painfully, impossibly real. Each scream, each whisper, each desperate plea pressed against my mind with the weight of decades. I pulled up to the old diner, broken windows, faded signs, peeling paint. The same diner I had stopped at countless nights before, the same night where a robbery had left me frozen in helplessness. I remembered the orders I had shouted, the adrenaline coursing through my veins, the fear, the guilt, and now, decades later, all played out exactly the same. I could not intervene differently. I could only watch, only act according to the script that had already been written. The rain intensified as I drove to the park. The swing swayed in the wind, squeaking like whispers. I remember a child running into traffic here, a scream cutting through the night, tires screeching, and my own failure to reach him in time. And now, the memory repeated itself, overlaying the present. I was reliving again, powerless to alter the outcome. Every call forced me to confront my failures. Every victim mirrored someone I had lost, someone I could not save. The city itself seemed alive, holding on to these memories, forcing me to witness them again and again. I was trapped in a loop, one that stretched across years, decades, entire lifetimes, each ending the same way. My failure, my helplessness, my guilt. I pulled over at a familiar intersection. A man staggered out of a building, clutching a wound in his side. The layout, the lighting, the distance from the curb. It was another repetition of a night I had lived countless times. I checked for a pulse. Still warm, still fading, still inevitable. And the voice on the radio crackled softly, almost like a whisper. You remember, don't you? I couldn't respond. I couldn't speak. I had no words for this. The repetition, the loops, the relentless reliving of failure pressed against my mind like water. I could feel the weight of decades pressing down on my shoulders, crushing me, suffocating me. I moved to another call. A robbery in progress. The layout, the movement, the fear in the cashier's eyes. It was identical to a night I had responded to long ago. I shouted orders, reached for my weapon, tried to intervene differently, and yet the sequence unfolded the same. The same chaos, the same fear, the same helplessness. I realized then that it did not matter what I did. The night had already happened, and I had already failed. The rain washed across the streets as I drove to the next scene. Neon lights reflected in puddles, distorted and fractured, and in those reflections I saw faces. Faces of victims, faces of people I had lost, faces of my own younger self. They watched me, accusing, pleading, reminding me that this was not the first time, that I had been here before, that I would be here again. I thought about quitting, about leaving the force, about abandoning the streets and the radio and the relentless repetition. But I knew it was impossible. I had been trapped in this loop for decades, and the night would never let me go. The radio would never stop. The calls would never end. The city, the memories, the failures. They were all stitched together, and I was inseparable from them. I parked at the station, rain dripping from my jacket, hair plastered to my forehead, body trembling. The cruiser hummed softly beneath me, alive with the static and the echoes of the night. I tried to silence the radio, tried to turn it off, but the voice continued. Welcome back, officer. I froze. I knew those words. I had heard them countless times. I had heard them at the start of every shift, every night, every repetition. And now I understood the truth. I had been reliving this night for decades. Each shift, each call, each failure, a perfect loop of memory and inevitability. I had never left it. I could never leave it. The city was alive with memory. Every street, every corner, every shadow, every building remembered the tragedies, the failures, the losses. And I had walked through it all, over and over, a prisoner of my own life. I was not responding to calls anymore. I was reenacting them. I was part of the cycle, trapped in a story that had no end. I thought about the partners I had lost, the victims I failed, the crimes I had witnessed, the lives I had tried to save. All of them pressed against me now, overlapping, merging with the present, demanding I remember, demanding I relive, demanding I face the truth I had tried to bury. I started the engine again. The streets were slick with rain, reflecting the neon signs, the flickering streetlights, and I drove because I had no choice. The loops would continue, the calls would come, the failures would repeat, and I would answer, just as I had for decades. One more call, one more street, one more victim, one more night. That was all it had ever been, and all it ever would be. I gripped the wheel tighter, eyes on the road, heart pounding in the endless rhythm of repetition. The radio crackled softly, the static humming through the car and through my bones. Welcome back, officer. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just drove into the night, into the rain, into the cycle that would never end, the loop that had no beginning and no end and no escape. And I knew, as the headlights cut through the darkness, that I would always be here, always reliving, always failing, always listening.